meeting of Tuesday, September 24th, 2019. On tonight's agenda, we have at 7 o'clock the community input, at 7:05 Finance Director appointment, 7:10 Senior Tax Relief Presentation, at 7:30 Board of Selectmen award of the CPS parking lot reconstruction contract, at 7:40 Town Administrator review of the fiscal 21 planning and Board of Health personnel requests. And 8:15, the Board of Selectmen vote to support or not support the individual special town meeting warrant articles. At 8:45, Town Government Organization Policy and Bylaw Review. At 9:15, Appointments and Resignations. 9:20, Cemetery Deeds. 9:25, Town Administrators Report. 9:40, the Board of Selectmen Liaison Reports. 9:50, Minutes, which I didn't see in my packet, so we're not doing those. And 10 o'clock, adjournment. And as always, there are sometimes when we take some of these out of order, we try to keep the important ones that we think people are going to be interested in and want to come to at the time that they're supposed to start. Then we sometimes fill in other things if we're ahead of schedule, which is not very often. So, is there anybody here for community input tonight? I'm sorry. Deb, are you together?
I'm doing two, and she's doing one, just but one of them's together, so there you go.
Oh, okay, so both of you,
So it's
come
like a song and
forward.
dance?
I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't,
I didn't bring the pony with me.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, that's okay.
My name's Debbie Bentley. I'm actually here representing the Garden Club. I live in Hill Road.
I'm Marilyn Cagini. I'm also here for the Garden Club, and I live on Curve Street.
So,
So I'm just going to tell you that we're here to give you the heads up as the most important people in town to know about everything that's going on in town. The Carlisle Garden Club has decided to honor the 50th anniversary of Earth Day next year. As you know, Earth Day started in 1970 and was really the impetus for all kinds of environmental legislation and the establishment of the EPA in our country, and has just grown and developed into a worldwide phenomena of celebration and education about the environment. We decided that we thought it would be a great idea to participate in that, and so we're going to do 2 events with your permission and assistance on the permissions to hold something on the town common or in the center park, depending on how many people we can get. But we're going to have 2 things. We're going to do a adult and teen-oriented TED Talk-like evening presentation in the Corey Auditorium, which we're applying for, which we do have insurance to cover, thankfully. And that will be on the actual Earth Day, which is Wednesday, April 22nd. It happens to be school vacation week, which actually I think would be nice because we can use the auditorium and hopefully get lots of folks to attend. That will be something that perhaps Deb may like to address a little further, as she's in charge of getting us wonderful speakers for that.
well, the idea is that this is a community input. We all live in the woods. A lot of us are doing really interesting things regarding sustainability and alternative technologies. So the idea is that we'll get residents from town residents, who are actually doing really innovative stuff, to do a 10-minute presentation telling the rest of the town what they're doing, because I think the thing with sustainability and climate change mitigation is we've all got to work together, and this is an opportunity for everybody to knowledge share and get together and learn what your neighbours are up to. So that's why we really want it to be a very different garden club event. It's much more about how we ensure that we have a livable planet in the future.
And then the second event will be a family-oriented afternoon, Sunday afternoon on April 26th. We're thinking that probably will be on the town common if you agree, that FRS has already agreed. In fact, their Environmental Action Committee has decided to co-sponsor the event with us that day. It'll be basically a couple of hours for environmental activities, education, fun, music, art, a gathering of the community. Pardon me?
No, that comes later. We got the seat swap before and the plant sale later, and this in between.
And we want to involve as many town departments, committees, nonprofit organizations, religious organizations in town, everybody in town. We want to invite everybody to participate because this is a big deal. And we've already started reaching out, but Deb's going to be doing a ton more of reaching out to different parts of the community to participate. So there you go. Any questions?
Great.
Sounds great.
Yeah, love it.
All right, so now I'm going to change my hat, and now I'm Debbie Bentley from the Poppy Project. And it's just a heads up. Now, the Poppy Project was always meant to be just for last year. I have 3,500 poppies sitting in my garage, in my boxes. They're obviously, the Poppy Project brought a lot of joy to a lot of people. I have no desperate feeling either way. I'm more than happy to put them out again for November for Veterans Day. But if you decide no, it was a one-off event, and we should keep it as that, and it should be that as precious as that, that's fine by me too. But it's actually your decision, not mine, because I had to ask you for permission in the first place. So if you could just get back to me and say, yes, go ahead with it, I'll organize it. When you say no, let's keep it as special as it was, that's fine. Just tell me.
Do it in another 100 years.
Well, it's the 75th anniversary of World War II. If you really want, I mean, we can all. I think there's been
There's
so many
always
wars.
an anniversary, yeah.
We can probably find an anniversary for every single year. But it's the Selectmen's decision or Select Board's decision, as we say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We will put that on the agenda then to have that discussion.
Discussion.
I turn these on.
You want these on?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Great. All right. Tim, Finance Director appointment.
Okay. Well, I might have been getting a little bit ahead of myself calling it Finance Director appointment. I think we're not quite there to the point of asking you to appoint a Finance Director tonight. However, I would, the search committee does have a preferred candidate, who is Kim Kane of Edgartown, Mass., who's the town accountant / finance director down there and has 32 years' experience as both a town accountant and a tax collector, and highly regarded in the field. I know Priscilla knows her professionally and has a high opinion of her. Our town auditors also do Edgartown, and I talked with our auditor, Dan Sullivan, and he couldn't have been more glowing in his praise. He really thought that, she'd be a very good candidate for the position of finance director. What I would ask the board for tonight is your authority to continue to negotiate with her on terms of employment and salary and so forth. And presuming we can come to terms on that, to authorize me to ask Chief Fisher to begin the background check, because we're going to do, obviously, a Cory check, background check, credit check, which we do under normal circumstances. The background check does involve making some inquiries in the community where the person lives, so it means the chief or someone is going to have to go to, Martha's Vineyard, It's too bad. It's too bad the weather is so warm. It's just someone has to do that. So, if all goes according to plan, I would hope to bring her to our next meeting on October 8th and ask you to appoint her. I know Kate was on the search committee, Scott Triolo of the finance committee, and Kevin Perkins of the audit committee, and we all really thought, that we felt very lucky we had a candidate of that caliber, because frankly, we had less than 10 applicants for the position. And not a good time to be looking, and, certainly under the circumstances, it was, so to have someone that kind of rose above the pack was a good thing.
So you think we'll be able to meet the person next time?
Yes, that would be my intention, before you're asked to make the appointment. But I just wanted you to know where we were and get your authorization to go forward.
I assume she's relocating?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no, you might ask why someone would leave Martha's Vineyard
Yeah.
after 32
We
years.
did ask her that.
Yeah.
but,
She's relocating to the Boston area.
I
She has
didn't see
friends
that.
there and has family in Vermont, and this is that much closer to that. And, not an easy decision, I suppose, to leave after 32 years, but she wants to make a change, and hopefully that's good for us.
Oh, relocating to Boston.
Yeah. So, I think just the sense of the board, but I think, okay. All right, thank you.
Good? All right. David, it's up to you. Senior tax relief presentation.
Is this an actual
This
presentation?
may take,
This is an actual presentation, if you guys don't mind.
No?
it may take a minute or two to come up.
Should we take our?
While you guys are relocating, Tim is just doing me a big favor by trying to get this up on the screen. I'll say that a lot of what I'm going to present is based on some research that was done fall of 2017 by the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College, and they wrote a wonderful research paper, which I think you guys have in your packets. And on page 3 of that research paper, there's a great chart comparing the various type of senior tax relief programs in the state. And we are honored, or at least I'm honored today, to have Abigail Walters with us, who is one of the authors of the research paper. So at a certain point in this, what I'm going to be doing, I just may turn to Abigail and she can describe, any in more articulate terms than I would, what we're trying to do here. Okay. So just beginning at the end, number 8, because I know I can get off track, so bring me back if I do. But at the end of the day, for Carlisle, we can improve our tax deferral program. And so we just have a few suggestions on that. And if you guys think that that's a decent idea, we have a tax advisory committee, myself, Angela Smith, Melissa as the assessor, and a couple Carlisle, and our finance director, unfortunately. So maybe we're gonna have to wait a little bit until we have the new finance director. But if you guys authorize it, then we'll get together and we'll make a recommendation to you, which might have to be an article on the town warrant. But the second thing that we're gonna ask for is something that occurred to me when Tammy Cuvea was presenting to you guys. And remember at the end of our new state rep, at the end of that meeting, toward the end, one or more of you said, what else can we do? And what else can you do is both Abby and I actually were in town today at the State House advocating for a certain bill that would improve the overall tax deferral program, not just Carlisle's, but the whole state's. And if Carlisle could just write a letter from the Selectmen saying we advocate for this bill, which Tammy Gouveia is co-sponsor of, that would be a help. That would be something that you guys could do, and it wouldn't cost us anything. It would just be, it's actually to create a pilot program, a 3-year pilot program. So anyway, with that, I'm gonna go on. So why offer tax relief? Not just to be nice, it sounds good, but one reason is to help older adults age in place. If you're not at home, where are you going to be? Maybe you're moving somewhere less costly or downsizing if you can, but we all know housing is an issue. Or if you get really sick, maybe you have to go into nursing home or assisted living, and if you can afford it, then there are some nice places. But if you can't, then the state is paying for it through Mass Health, and the state is paying billions of dollars into Mass Health, and 90%, more than 90% of that is for institutional care. So there's really a financial interest, or there should be, in trying to help people age at home, if possible. Not every case is possible, obviously. So one of the drivers here was a study done by UMass Boston. They put a paper out a number of years ago talking about economic insecurity. And it wasn't just for Massachusetts, it was for every state in the country. And they rated every state in the country according to the cost of living. And they came up with this, and they used housing, healthcare, transportation, and miscellaneous stuff. And they came up with this metric which showed that there are people that live below the poverty line that obviously get social assistance. There are people that are above a certain income level that are fine because they're above that income level. But there's people that are in between the poverty level and that upper income level that are struggling, and that's what they consider the economic insecurity. So this might surprise you, or maybe not. Massachusetts is the number 2 state in terms of economic insecurity. That's bad. I mean, Mississippi is the worst, and we're the second worst, and New Jersey and New York are very close on our heels. And it's largely because of the cost of living here in the state, not because we're bad people or a bad state. It's cost of living. So what can you do in terms of tax relief programs? There is, and I know a lot of people here are familiar with this, we have a wonderful senior tax work-off abatement program. Ours, the state allows up to $1,500. We're doing $1,000, and actually we're fine with that. But we could go higher if the law allows us to go higher if we wanted to. We have 25 slots, so we've allocated $25,000 as a town, and that was in the town meeting of 2013 that we upped that to $25,000, if I remember correctly, because I had just come that year, or the year before. The one in red is the Senior Circuit Breaker Tax Credit, which is a statewide program. Some people may be familiar with it. In terms of participation, it's probably the most effective program in the state. Then there's senior tax exemptions, which are offered through the assessor's office, and there's a couple different kinds. And so the assessor's office has a listing, which I think I included in your packets, which shows what we offer, including the tax deferral program. The thing is about the exemptions is that they have relatively low income levels, so it's really hard to qualify. So I asked Mary Ann today up in the assessor's office how many we have that do qualify, and she said 5 or 6. So it's not a lot of people. I mean, and she said, and I said, is that just this year or a prior year? She's like, no, every year. It's really hard to qualify for. And then lastly, there's the Senior Tax Deferral Program, which is kind of literally what we're talking about today. And that has, the statute has an income level of as low as $20,000 and an interest rate, if you do defer your taxes, which is putting off your taxes, of 8% paid to the city or town. The town has the ability to lower that interest rate and has the ability to raise the income limit. So in Carlisle, I'll show you where Carlisle is at momentarily. So from those 4 programs, one has a 13% participation rate, and one has a 0.2% participation rate, and the other 2 are in between. I'm not revealing what they were. These numbers up top, the homeowners age 65 plus, from 2016, that's taken from Abby's research. There were 456,000 homeowners age 65 plus in the state, and there were 179,000 renters 65 plus in the state. So that's where I'm getting my percentages, because I know what the numbers are from her research, and we know what the numerator and denominators are. So the income, the exemptions, I'm going to power through some of these slides. The exemptions allow $500 if you're over age 70. The town has the ability to lower it to raise the exemption from a $500 to $1,000 and lower the age limit from 70 to 65. Ours, kind of strangely, does go up to $1,000, which is good, but it has the age limit at 60, and I'm not sure why. And I think it's something that maybe town council should look at, but I'm really not sure. Not that I object to 60, it's just that everything I've seen uses that age 65. The circuit breaker credit, you have to, if you're a single person, you can earn up to $58,000, and if you're married, up to $88,000 in order to qualify. But the thing that gets a lot of people here in Carlisle is really not the income limit. It's the value of the home. And we're not the only town where that's a problem, but it is a problem for here. However, as you'll see, people still participate, and it still actually works. So here's the slide that compares where we're at, and this is from information from the Department of Revenue from 2016, but I don't think the figures have changed really very much. We had 61 filers that did the circuit breaker credit in 2015, I guess. So that number might be a little bit higher, a little bit lower in recent years, but it's probably around the same. So that saved our taxpayers that did successfully apply for $62,000, and the average credit they got was over $1,000. The current limit on the credit, it's indexed by inflation, so it goes up every year. The current amount you can get back is $1,100. So getting an average of over $1,000 is good. As you can see, it's the second highest amongst all the towns. And if you look at Concord, for example, we're at 61, they're at 260, but their population is 4 times as big as ours. So proportionally, we're about where we were with Concord. And this is a statewide program. It's nothing that we have to legislate. People just file for it in their state income tax. So it's pretty straight.
They have to know about it.
They have to know about it. That's the big thing. They have to know about it. AARP puts out a training program for volunteers in order to help people do it. We don't have any AARP preparers here in Carlisle, but this is one of the few programs where the COA here in Carlisle doesn't do it, but we send people either to Chelmsford or to Bedford for their preparers, and it's very helpful. The way it works, very, very, very briefly, is if you earn it's that second paragraph down, if you earn $40,000, 10% of that 40 would be $4,000. And so if your tax is over $4,000, then you can get a credit. So if somebody's tax is $10,000 and the 10% of what they earn is $4,000, then they're eligible for the whole $1,100 credit. But they could be eligible for less than that. That's that point.
That's all from the state.
That's all from the state.
That doesn't cut down the amount of income that we're getting.
Exactly. It's all from the state, and every year the figures change slightly because they have it indexed. It comes out from the Department of Revenue in the fall. This is one of the only programs that renters also benefit from. I'm not going to go through the math, but there's a formula that renters can benefit and get the credit as well. It's an imputed thing. I'm happy to go over it if anybody has any questions, but I'm trying to respect the 20 minutes. Then there's the Senior Tax Work-Off Program. I think I described that already before. That's working pretty successfully for us. It's not that we wouldn't want to up it from $1,000 to $1,500. That money comes from the town overlay, so we'd have to get agreement from the assessors. It's just that it's actually hard to get people to work the number of hours just to get up to 1,000. They have to work about 83 volunteer hours just to get up to 1,000. So, I mean, yes, we would love to have people have $1,500 off, but it's hard enough to get them up to 1,000. So when I came here in 2012, I think Carlisle was doing 700, and we had upped it from 700 per person to 1,000. So.
And you said there are 25 slots?
Yes, they don't have to be full slots. We have, Angela, as you guys know, is very innovative. We have a lot of people that do half slots or quarter slots. So if somebody can only has the wherewithal to do a half a slot, they'll get a $500 credit. They can earn, and it's an imputed amount that you earn. The minimum wage that is used, $12. So it's $12 divided into $1,000 gives you the 83 or whatever it is hours that you have to work in order to get the full slot.
And
So.
have they all been filled?
Interestingly enough, I think the last 2 years we've used 23 out of the 25 slots. So for one reason or another, some people aren't able to complete it, or in order to do the work, you have to work for a town department. So the town department has to want you to work. We have people at the library, we have people that help out with, where's Linda? Linda Fantasia's got somebody here who was a senior tax worker, and we have various people that help out, the COA as well. But, it has to work. It has to work for the departments, and it has to work for the people.
And there's no income nor assessed value restriction on that.
Our program does not have an assessed value. Some towns do. The statute actually says that the town can design that aspect of the program. So some towns have an income limit. We don't have the overwhelming demand for it, so there's really no reason to set the income limit. But we could if we wanted to. Mass property tax deferral, I'll talk to this. Abby's really the expert at it. We have 0 people participating in it. And in the 7 years I've been here, we've had 1 person in 7 years that have participated. There's reasons for that. So somebody who's age 65 and above, who owns their property, has been an owner of property in Massachusetts for 5 years and has lived in Massachusetts for 10 years, and as the statute says, has an income of not more than 20,000, can apply. Now, a lot of towns have raised that income limit. You can raise it to up to the circuit breaker for a single person, which is currently 58,000. And that's one of the things we'll advocate for, is that we raise that limit up to 50. Right now, we're at 40 here in Carlisle. But in order to defer your taxes, you have to there's a lien that's put on your house, and that's, not agreeable for some people. Understood. They want to leave the home to their whoever they want to leave it to. But, if they're paying $10,000 in taxes, they're deferring that $10,000 for a couple years in a row, it could help them stay in their home. And then when the home gets sold, the town gets the money back, plus, as things stand now, 8% interest per year. So it's not necessarily that they're going to lose their home, it's just they lose a portion of whatever the taxes that have been accruing. But, when people hear 8% and people hear lien, then it's a deterrent, and that's why. That's one of the reasons why, anyway.
Excuse me, David, did you say that 8% could be changed?
Yes, the 8% could be changed, and perfect lead-in, Barney. Perfect lead-in. There we are. We're in the aqua. We're at 8%, the interest rate. Chelmsford's also at 8%, but Rebecca's at 8%. But Acton's at 1%, Concord's at 4%, Lexington's at 1%, Lincoln's at 4%, Littleton's at 1%. I don't know about this 0% at Westford. That looks a little fishy to me, but.
Westford and, I can't think of the name. Marshfield also has 0% interest rate, and they still only have like 5 participants.
Yes. So you probably have this, Abby has these towns memorized. But yeah, I think Lexington is a really big proponent of this. And if you look, you can see the number of participants, 41. There's only a few towns that are at that level. Lexington, Newton, I think, is number 1. Wellesley's pretty high. Quincy's pretty high for some reason. I think it depends on the people, if you're promoting the program and if there's actually a demand. But yes, in answer to your question, we could lower that rate. I don't know that it would drive up the people, but it might make people who are thinking about it to not look at it unfavorably. Littleton had lowered their rate a couple years ago. I actually had spoken about it with Bonnie. She was very helpful with it, but as you can see, it didn't raise the number of participants, at least recently.
The share of 65 plus homeowners by percentage, share of what?
Share of actual homeowners. So on the next slide, I think there's
98% of homeowners in Carlisle
Yes.
are 65 and older?
No.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand.
It's the share of people who are 65 and older who are homeowners. So 98% of people,
okay.
65-year-olds own a home.
Yeah, okay, that's,
So, and yes,
That's why the average
right,
is about
so
10%.
there are as of the time that Abby and her colleagues did the research, there were 402 homeowners age 65 plus. And a very large percent, 98%, I know, we have amongst the highest. And the upper income towns tend to have it. I think Weston is, and some of the towns are at that same level as us, but it's pretty high.
Statewide, only 926 homes are.
That's where I'm going with this, Nathan. That's where I'm going with
I
this.
want to just also point out, 30 homeowners in Carlisle have an income of under 20K.
Yes, and the next slide shows the extension. This is what you did by hand, right?
This is, these are based off the current population survey from the census, and so,
The federal census.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good point, Kate. So 30 people have income as of 2017 or 2016, whenever the research was done. That same 30 people are also under 25,000. When you go up to 30,000, it goes up to 73, up to 40,000, 113. At 40,000, it becomes significant to us at the COA because, as Angela pointed out to me, the qualifications for fuel assistance is just over 40,000.
Are these adjusted gross figures?
I'm sorry.
Adjusted gross income figures,
Gross
or
income?
not net?
Yeah, it's gross income.
Gross.
Yeah.
So earlier, though, you said that there were only 4 people that would qualify for
the exemptions.
Yeah, based upon income.
I-
How does that match with 30 people under 20,000?
You-
To qualify, you have to be making less than.
Yeah, the qualifications for the exemptions are very low.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. There's a way of doing that, of changing that to, that we could change the statute. It's section 41C that we're using. We could change it to 41D, which would index to inflation. It would add like $5,000 to the qualification, add $5,000 of capacity for people to earn. So maybe a few people would be, one sec, Dave, would be eligible. But we don't control, I mean, we could adopt the different part of the statute, but we don't control the figures. What were you going to say, Dave?
Just David Freeman, Church Road, and having worked with some of this stuff for some of the town plans that have been done. My experience with the census figures for Carlisle is that these numbers have pretty high plus or minus in terms of accuracy. So I think if you use these figures, you should go and check that, because some of them, the margin of error was greater than the number. In the census, it'll say 10% of, or 10 Carlisle residents are X, but it's plus or minus 19.
19%?
No, plus or minus 19 people.
Oh, okay.
The
Okay.
range is from
Okay,
none of them to 30 of them.
I see.
So
Okay.
these numbers I wouldn't take as being as precise as they look necessarily.
Okay, you're talking about in terms of the income?
Well, in terms of anything for the census for Carlisle,
Okay.
since we're so small,
All right.
in non-decennial years, they do a small number of people, and then they,
Oh, the US Census, sorry.
and then they do a
Gotcha.
calculation
Right.
over the whole population, and so the margin of error is huge.
So in other words, like if we're looking at the under 60,000, which is 130, it could actually be 149, or it could be 19 less than 130?
Well, I mean, it depends on what the margin of error, it could be 130 plus or minus 30.
I see, okay,
So it could be anywhere from 100 to 160, but
right.
in some cases, the margin of error is literally higher than the number that they say is at that income level.
Okay, well, I guess we could accept that.
I'm saying you should check it if you want to present them, because they look like very specific numbers.
Right.
They're likely not that precise, that's all.
And I just want to also ask, on some of those things where you were talking about qualifying or not qualifying.
Yep.
And those 30 people, let's say they really are under 20.
Yep.
They might be sitting in a house which is worth 600 or 700,000, and that's what disqualifies them, is not their income.
On the circuit, from the circuit breaker thing, yes, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Not for the deferral.
Not for the deferral.
Only
Deferral
takes-
doesn't negate it.
takes it- okay.
So, you know, there's the other things that don't allow people to be in the program, and jump in if I'm missing something, is, first of all, you have to own the home. If you have a mortgage, technically you can have a mortgage and do the deferral, but it would mean that the mortgagor would have to agree to allow the lien. And unfortunately, with the, you know, we don't have the neighborhood bank lending us money now, it's hard to get the mortgagor to agree to allow the lien. So a lot of people that don't own their home, that have a mortgage, can't do the deferral. Would that be fair? Okay. Yeah, so there's that. But still, this is the same slide that I had toward the beginning, but with the programs written in. So the circuit breaker, which is the only statewide program, has 83,000 participants, and that's 13% of the total population from the Boston College statistics. The tax exemptions, which we do offer, you know, it's fairly low, around 3%. The senior tax worker, this actually is an estimate that I did based on some UMass figures, using 25 slots as an average in the 240 towns that do offer the senior tax worker program. And so I'm estimating that at 6,000, which would be 1.3%. But the senior tax deferral program is limping along at 900, or today when we were doing at the hearing, you said 800.
Yeah.
It's going lower, not higher. So it's kind of a I don't want to say a broken program, but so this is where we're going with this. It would be great at the end of the day if Carlisle, if we would have a town warrant, an article that would lower the interest rate to something perhaps more palatable for people. it may not be a game changer, but it might help a little bit. And also, we're at 40,000 now. We could go up to the circuit breaker limit, which changes every year, but is currently 58,000. So that could help more people get the circuit breaker. Do the tax deferral. Yeah, right. So that's again, that's just a suggestion. I'm not pounding the table for it, but it seems reasonable. It's not going to blow the doors off of what we're doing as a town. But what we would, there was another program that I wanted to mention because I think it would interest you guys, and it was something that Nathan said when Tammy Gouvet was presenting that caught my attention. There's this means-tested senior exemption program out there, which is commonly known as the Sudbury Plan, because they're the first town that's done it. In order to have this program, you have to apply, what's the term? Home rule petition, thank you. So it's not a program that the state sponsors for every town, although that last bullet point says that last year, the legislature actually passed it 150-0, a uniform program for the means-tested senior exemption. But local towns, but it still didn't pass, because it went to the Senate. They added an amendment, and then they couldn't reconcile. But Concord's doing it, Harvard's doing it, and obviously Sudbury's doing it. Sudbury's really the only one that has a track record, like a 3 or 4 year track record. Concord only has done it for a year, and Harvard is just starting it this year. So I don't want to misrepresent things, but it is to a point that Nathan made. What it does is it presupposes that, like the circuit breaker, if your taxes are more than 10% of your income, then the town will exempt some of your taxes. And in order to lower your taxes, they shift that tax burden to the rest of the taxpayers. And it was a really good point that Nathan made at that meeting when Tammy Gouveia was here, and that's that. But what about that people at that next level who may also be struggling? And now their taxes are going up even more in order to help the lowest of the lowest income. So I think that's a good point.
And is there any local leeway to change how the difference is shared among the rest of the taxpayers? I mean, like, could you choose to say, well, it's only going to be spread across the people who are, I don't know.
I think so. But the point is that it's not uniform because they haven't passed anything uniform. Do you know any more about this than I do?
No, that's about all I know.
Yeah.
That's all I'll take.
Yeah. From what I understand, it is added about 0.5%. For the towns that have used it, it's added about 0.5% extra tax to the other people. So that's the cost of doing that. So we're not advocating it, but in case people would ask about it, we wanted you to
The
see
state of
it.
Connecticut's had this for about 50 years.
Okay.
And we might look at them as a model, because they have a statewide program. And I know it's at least that long since my parents were in it.
Do you want to talk about the statewide program? That's on the last slide. Okay. So that's a good entry, statewide programs.
So something that we propose in the brief that's included in your packets today is for a new statewide program for the property tax deferrals. And Representative Ed Kennedy proposed a pilot program to test the feasibility of a state-run property tax deferral, and this is modeled after our proposal. So under our proposal, the program would be open to all households 65 and older. It would remove any income limits. And the rationale for this is threefold. First, it's the idea that inadequate retirement income isn't just limited to low-income households, but many middle-income households are also facing this challenge as well. At the center, we have something called the National Retirement Risk Index, which compares the income people have in retirement, or before retirement, to the income that they will have in retirement, and it looks at whether or not they'll be able to maintain their standard of living based off of their retirement savings and their pension benefits. Second, we think that having universal eligibility will help eliminate any stigma associated with the program and with placing a lien on the house. And third, we think that an absence of an income limit actually helps facilitate the administration of the program a statewide level. And this, we also learned a lot from the state of Oregon, which has had a state-run property tax deferral program and they had without income limits up until the early 2000s, and their programs has been around for almost 50 years. So our idea about how this program would function is that households 65 and older who have a primary residence in Massachusetts would be able to defer their property taxes until the deferrals and accumulated interests reach 60% of the first $1 million on the assessed value of the property. So we wouldn't be allowing people to defer on their multi-million-dollar second homes in Nantucket or anything like that. We think that the interest rate should be set to the state's borrowing costs plus a buffer to cover the administrative costs and any potential for defaults. But we also learned from the state of Oregon that they had very low default rates until the housing crisis, but that was because they allocated almost $76 million out of their revolving loan fund towards another program. So all of a sudden they were lower on cash. And our idea is that another concern that localities have is that if they have a large amount of homeowners deferring their property taxes, even though they'll eventually recoup those taxes with interest, that could be happening in 10 or 20 years. And often with strapped budgets, they want that money at a sooner time. So our idea is that the state would reimburse localities for those foregone taxes, and then the homeowner would repay directly to the state so that it was cost neutral at that individual and household level. And so the state would then place a lien on the house for unpaid taxes plus interest, and would be repaid when either the homeowner dies or sells the home. The other important thing we think would really make this program successful is making application really easy. And so what we would envision is just having a simple check on the box on your property tax bill saying, I certify I've been here for, I meet all the residency requirements. And that would enable you to then start applying to participate in the program, and that your property tax bill would also give you an annual balance of the outstanding taxes you owe, because currently there isn't any mechanism process in the state to check your balance. And so on average, households would be able to defer about $4,300 a year in taxes, and that's much more than the $500 or $1,000 limit that you could receive from exemptions. So to finance the program, the state would set up a revolving loan fund. And the size of that revolving loan fund would depend on the program participation. And while the program participation statewide is generally low, the new program would be well publicized. It would be much more accessible than the current program. And I think the other important thing is that since it's universal and statewide, it'd be much more easier to communicate to your neighbor or to your friend who lives in another town about this new opportunity, whereas right now we have about 311 different programs in the state. And so we had some estimations about what participation would look like, and we think that it would probably be around about 10% of homeowners, and that's because in the state of Oregon, they peaked at about 13%, and there's still a lot of folks who are driven by leaving their entire home equity to their children. And so with that participation rate, we think that the state would have to borrow a small amount to reimburse those localities, but then it would really just be during the initial startup period of the program, and then as homeowners sell or pass away, they would be bringing money back into the state for that revolving loan fund. So we're really excited about this opportunity, but what we really need now is a pilot program to answer some key questions before we start an entire statewide program. And a pilot program would help answer questions like how many people are likely to participate, how do you address the resistance to putting a lien on a home? That's one of the biggest barriers we've seen. Thinking about how people will use the program. Are they going to use it for daily expenses, or are they going to use it for, making small modifications to your home, like installing bathroom bars and making sure that you can age in place in your home? And our other idea too is, what is the appropriate loan to value ratio? We would expect, right now our gut instinct is that a 60% loan to value ratio would be the limit to how much people can defer their property taxes so that there's a buffer to the state in case there is a default. And then, of course, the last question is how big of a revolving loan fund the state would need to start this program and keep it running. And so that's why we're really excited about Senator Edward Kennedy's bill, which would create a study for a 3-year pilot program looking into this. And that would be modeled after our program. So thank you.
Thanks, Abby. So just to wrap things up, we're really on,
Question?
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Essentially, this is a form of government-sponsored reverse mortgage. And do you know what the costs of this program would be versus the reverse mortgage? Or alternatively, since these people will almost always have a large amount of equity already in their house, a home equity loan?
So I think it's some 2 important things. One, a home equity loan, you have to pay monthly. And this, you would have to wait.
It could be interest only.
Yeah, but still, you're still having to make monthly payments. The other important thing is that you can do a property tax deferral on a year-to-year basis to decide how much you want to take out of your home. Where a reverse mortgage, you have much higher upfront costs. And if you need to end up moving, those high upfront costs are much harder to recoup if you suddenly need long-term care within 3 years. That's why so few people take out a reverse mortgage. And second, a reverse mortgage really locks you in. You know, all right, I'm taking out $100,000 of my home, and now I need to make sure I stay there. Whereas this is much more flexible for people and how they see. So I see it very separately. Yes.
So, I guess statewide, but also just within Carlisle, do we know how many homes that are owned by people 65 and plus are loan-free,
Or
mortgage-free?
home. So that, so let me think about this through. So about 80% of people 65 and older own a home across Massachusetts. And then for folks, most enter retirement owning free and clear. I can't give you a precise number, but it's probably over 65%, somewhere to 70%. But I can follow up with you on that if you'd like.
That was a good question. Good question. I think the really attractive thing here for some, if you want to get down to it for on an individual town level, is for a small town like Carlisle, who depends on the cash flow of tax payments, having 10 people do deferrals and having to, even though we know we're going to recoup those tax payments with interest, we're having to wait. And so it kind of does affect us. Whereas the state program would actually pay for it, and then they would get the recouping of the program. And so my last line, and then we'll leave you, is we could volunteer for Carlisle to be a participation in the pilot program. So if the legislation passed, Carlisle could be one of the towns that participates as a pilot. They're looking for about 10,000 participants?
Participants.
So that could be quite a few towns.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And we want diversity in towns too.
And the we, who's the we?
The Center for, so this is something that we were thinking about at the Center for Retirement Research. I have 3 co-authors
Okay.
on this
Okay.
paper.
And then you've been working with Edward Kennedy around drafting the bill, and
I actually wasn't involved in the drafting of the bill. That
It was
the
the Mass Council on Aging,
Mass Council on
which
Aging.
is the advocacy group for the Councils on Aging, actually asked Senator Kennedy to
and this is the
sponsor.
Kennedy and Lowell?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is Senator Kennedy from Wall.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you know, it's just a suggestion, but if Carlisle was willing to, and Tammy Gouveia is a co-sponsor, so it would be actually supporting Tammy,
Yeah.
who's supporting us. Tim, thanks for the use of your laptop.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for your extra time and good questions.
A good presentation.
We'll catch up.
We'll catch up.
We're not. That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, is this related? Same stuff, right? So what would we say, we'd discuss that at a future meeting?
I think after they, once they pass that legislation.
I think there was another thing
But-
as to whether or not we were gonna ask the
So the-
town to adjust some of the numbers, right?
Oh, and
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Some of the
There were
other
two- see, there were two
areas.
things that we were being
Right.
asked.
And also, before the legislation gets passed, to
Do we wanna make it
decide as a board if we wanted
58,000 and
to
1%?
send a letter, not necessarily, but even just a
Yeah.
letter of support for the legislation.
Well,
Yeah.
that we could we discuss that tonight, since we're on the agenda? And you want to just make that decision now? Or do you think we need to do this at another time?
I think we should put it on the next agenda.
let's put it on
Let
the
people
agenda.
think about it and also
Numbers.
get a draft letter that we, yeah.
So there's two things, right? It was
Yes.
are we gonna support
Right,
the
tax
townwide
deferral.
thing?
Yeah.
And then the other one was, what I think they were saying, we need to, would need to be a warrant on town
That's
meeting in the
correct.
spring,
Yeah.
is raising it to 58,000 and lowering the interest rate.
Okay. It doesn't have to be at our next agenda, because it'd be after the special town meeting that we do that and get ready for that.
Correct. Right.
On an agenda in the near future.
What's the timeline?
Coming soon to
We said all warrant articles would be.
November 15th.
No, but
Oh.
for the Springtown meeting?
Yeah, November 15th, right?
Oh,
So I
really?
don't know
We want-
as
we
many
want-
time as we
Oh,
thought.
that's true.
Notice that
Notice
we're
that
going to
it's
seek
coming.
one,
Yeah, that you're gonna seek
the actual
one.
articles by the end of January, but we want to know, a heads up that
Yeah,
what the ask is going to be.
Yeah.
I think we should get a recommendation from the tax advisory group to tell
yeah,
us what it's gonna cost.
yeah.
So, Tim, can you get us a recommendation from the tax advisory committee
Sure. Yes.
for that?
And I
So,
suppose
For
they
our
would,
next meeting, so that,
and they would be the ones to recommend a warrant article to make that change. Is that
Well,
right, or no?
I
They
don't-
just gather the data?
they and the, Council on Aging, I would say in tandem,
Yeah,
would probably be doing that.
okay.
Okay. Do you want to do the contract later? We can skip to the review of the planning, the personnel requests, since I see people from various boards here, and we can circle back. So, Tim?
Okay, you had given both the Board of Health and the Planning Board the opportunity to present additional information in connection with their personnel change requests. You had voted to pass 5 or 6 previous requests onto the Personnel Board, and they're working on those. They hope to get them done by the October 15th deadline. These are 2 that initially you declined to pass on to the Personnel Board, but these boards asked for additional time to make their case to you. So I know we've got Linda's here and some of the members of the Board of Health, and I saw George, he's over there with some planning board members. So, got Board of Health on the agenda first, so we'd like to hear from them.
Board of Health first.
Yeah. I think
Yes.
that's the order. One up. Yeah.
Expanded
The lectern.
wasn't prepared for that.
Hi.
This is, first, before I start, this just came in tonight. It's one of the attachments with the materials that we submitted. Ruth Maury, she's public health nurse in Wayland. She's also president of the Mass Health, Public Health Nursing Association.
Thanks.
So, on behalf of the Board of Health, thank you for the presentation, and this position is very important to the Board of Health, but we hope you'll see that it's also important to the town. And I have with me tonight Tricia McGeen, and she has been our part-time public health nurse under the grant-funded pilot program. So we've completed 1 year, we are moving into our second year. So what we are asking for tonight is funding for FY '22, right, July 2020. And I think that I can speak for the board and say that the board recognizes that whenever you're adding a new position to your personnel system, you have to be very careful, you have to scrutinize it, because there are other competing interests, and the Board of Health is aware of that. And I think if you consider the Board of Health's history, you'll see that they've always been very fiscally responsible, no budget overruns. Our last staffing request was 2015. So keeping that in mind, even though the nurse would be housed under the Board of Health, I think the position needs to be seen as a town position, because it's a very multifaceted type of position that would deal with many of the community issues, not just specific to Board of Health. And you have what Tricia has been working on for the past year, and the purpose of it was to collect the data so that we could make this argument to you of the benefits of a public health nurse to Carlisle. And we think they've been very measurable and just excellent. Feedback we've been getting has been excellent. Residents have really appreciated having someone that they can go to with not only medical but non-medical questions. Public health nurse doesn't diagnose or treat, but kind of fills in the gaps between a resident's concern and their primary medical care. So it's not intended to replace primary care, it's intended to supplement it. As an example, Tricia has met with the director of EMS, and there are cases that don't warrant a trip in the ambulance to the hospital, but that they feel could use some kind of intervention, some additional follow-up, some additional care, so that there isn't an eventual trip in an ambulance to the hospital. So those are the things that we're looking for. We're also looking for education. We want to educate the community about healthy behaviors so that we can avoid critical cases in the future. And right now, we're working on a collaborative grant with Bedford and Concord on vaping education. And we are going to be working with the school to bring in a middle school curriculum on the risks of vaping. We're going to bring in a speaker. So while it's nice to educate the community about healthy behaviors, so what do you do about the people that are experiencing or doing bad behaviors? How do you help them? So you can warn people about vaping, but what about the students, even at the high school, that are already addicted to nicotine? You need someone to help them to get off, to stop using the products. So that's where the public health nurse would fit in. I think I've pretty much covered. This would be a part-time position, non-benefited. We are calculating about up to 10 hours a week, and we would look to you to support the program and to move it forward under your new personnel policy. It will go to the personnel board, they'll review it, and then if you agree, move it on to the finance committee for FY '22. I hope you have maybe some questions for Tricia or her take on it, or.
Thank you. Anybody have
Well,
questions, comments?
I have a question first, not jumping to questions for you, but what's the estimated cost of those 10 hours?
So for the first year, we funded it at $10,000. And that gave us 7 to 8 hours a week. And we pretty much ran out of that by the end of August. We got a slight extension under that grant, so we're going to continue it. And then we applied for and received a second Concord Community Chess Grant. And so that's going to carry us through the balance to 2020. So we're thinking around between 10 and 15,000 is what we would kind of target for an annual cost.
And are there no other grants available?
And we would be happy to apply for grants. This is very similar to what we did with the social worker. Initially, it started fully grant funded until we really proved that we need this person. And I think we'll feel the same way about the public health nurse. And there may be a way to supplement the cost, or we may have to say we can only spend this much. So we'll look at the workload and make sure we're prioritizing how the nurse, whether it's Tricia or someone else, would do the work. Part of it is individual care, but part of it is community education. So we would have to strike a balance.
I have a couple questions. So how many of the people that you feel that you helped in some way were over, say, 55 or 60? How many were older?
Oh,
All of them?
yes.
And that's not because that was the target community, that's just because who sought the services?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I'm, pigeonholed into that, age
Yeah.
group. But it's who it was given to me by Angela or whoever, can you check on someone? And then I do that. I've been a home care nurse with Emerson for 23 years, so I've been doing this for a long time. I'm the public health nurse for Lincoln and Concord as well. And so this, especially this past year, Lincoln just added this position, as did Concord. So this past year it was all 3 towns, and then I am the one person between the 3. So it was really good coordination, which I really enjoyed between the towns. Going forward, emergency preparedness is really on our front burner, especially, each town kind of has a different focus. The town of Concord is, we're really working to reestablish the MRC, the Medical Reserve Corps, and if we could do a regional one, it would be stronger. So it's been a great year. I can tell you the residents are so appreciative of the services, particularly nowadays when people are so used to convenience, right? I can come to their house. They don't have to go. They do have to go to the doctor, but if they have a question, I can be that liaison. I can call the doctor and say, I'm here with XYZ and I have some concerns. So they appreciate that instead of just going to the ER or just going to the doctor without kind of me being that middle person. I have the experience, so I'm familiar with that. But, we also, I actually shouldn't say when you're talking about the age, so we did a TIC program with the Carlisle Summer Fund program, right, and they're 4. But most of the people that I worked my magic with are the older adults that are falling through the cracks, want to age in place, and just need a little more assistance.
And that usually those folks were identified for you by the COA
Correct.
generally?
Mhm.
So what was the COA doing in the past with concerns like this? Do you know? I mean,
I think,
They probably had maybe access to visiting nurses or through their primary care, but not quite enough. Remember, we've got shorter hospital stays, people are being discharged earlier and sent home, and particularly with elderly, I think one of the things we've learned is managing medications, is difficult for them, and sometimes having someone like Tricia who has the medical knowledge and then the personal touch to just kind of keep them on track.
they were falling through the cracks, right? So you can't just call, I work for Emerson Home Care, you just can't call and say, can you go check on Mary? There has to be a skilled need. And so the skilled need is, IV or wound care or whatever. But I can be like the step below that to say, maybe you do need that, then I can make a referral for skilled need to the doctor. So I found it invaluable, and the residents were thrilled.
We also ran an Ask the Nurse program where anyone could stop by town hall with their questions. And as with any pilot program, takes a lot to get off the ground. And so we didn't set our expectations too high the first year, but I think there were a lot of successes and what I found interesting, continuing relationships. And that's what you want. As someone said, that the public health nurse is seen as a friend. And, you know, they really do develop relationships. And we're hoping to build that into the school population in the sense of, yes, you have your school nurses, but sometimes it's the family that's in need, not just the student. And so how do you help that family? And this doesn't replace, you know, the personal responsibility of the families and their own medical providers. It's just to help out.
Yeah, so just a couple of questions. You know, you mentioned the clinics, and you stayed here. So thank you for pulling this together. It's actually quite nice. You know, you say you service 25 residents, with, you know, some residents coming back multiple times, which I think is great. How long were these clinics? I mean, ultimately, you know, we're just because you were here a short period of time, right? So was a clinic like an all-day thing? How many days were you here?
Heavens no.
Or were you here a day? Was it?
Did he ask the nurse program? Is that
Yeah,
the
so I
one?
guess, like, in
Yeah,
terms of.
1 hour.
So, okay.
Once
so-
a month, 1 hour.
Okay, and were you here, so that's a pretty good turnout for,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so was it only advertised through COA? Because I actually,
No,
I didn't really.
it was in the mosquito.
Okay, I don't really read the mosquito much, because I'm involved in all these freaking meetings anyway, so, I usually live it. But no, so I think that's actually a good turnout. You know, one of the things that I was thinking too is maybe if we get even just more outreach, you know, maybe we'll have, you know, more participation, but also too, so what happens in, you know, if somebody has a question, you know, outside of those 7 to 8 hours, right? Do they call Linda, do they call COA, does it get back to you? You know, how long does somebody have to wait in order to get a response, or?
If I get a call from Angela and someone has a question or needs me, like that day, I'm around. And so I kind of balance my time between the 3 towns. But, you know, if it's emergent, obviously, they're going to go to the doctor.
Or EM.
Yeah,
They're-
they can't wait for the
they're
next
gonna
week.
call
If they have a
EM.
question about my medications, absolutely call me. I can go to their house. They can meet me here. We can go to Benfield or wherever.
Yeah.
Super
This won't
flexible.
replace EMS.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
no,
It's
but,
not intended to be 24/7.
No,
Right.
you don't have to wait for that 1 hour, one time a month
yeah,
to
that's,
ask me a
right,
question.
that's more my question,
I
is that,
understand.
right, is,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you know, are we truly limiting the service by limiting the hours? You know, not that I'm saying we should make this full-time thing, but, you know, I just, that those hours are being used
A
efficiently.
lot of it is telephone consultations, too.
Mm-hmm.
Tricia has a card, and she will hand it out.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Good. You show half of your time in advocacy and program development. Is that something that's going to shrink, or what's involved in that?
So, I mean, a lot of that is communication between Angela and residents and planning, like the TIC program and the summer program,
The vaping program.
the vaping grant program, which is a very hot topic right now, as you've probably heard.
It did just get banned today.
Did it officially go?
Yeah.
Yes, in the state.
For temporary.
Statewide, yeah,
Temporarily, yes.
4 months, yeah. So that's huge news.
But those programs are also Board of Health initiatives, and so it's complementing our staff and providing that.
And we do, Emerson Home Care does the communicable disease follow-up with the state. So that is, you know, follow-up on tick-borne, food-borne illnesses. So that's a part of this job as well.
And what we currently have is Board of Health is funded for the communicable disease reporting and a senior flu clinic. And that's already in the Board of Health budget, comes to about $800 or $1,000 maybe. We would combine that into one, and the public health nurse would take over those duties, which currently are contracted separately to Emerson Home Care.
But I do it.
But
So
it
it's like,
turns out it's the same
several,
nurse,
it's
so.
several, right. So it's just like, let's get this
So
together.
you're saying there might be some savings on that side?
We would keep, no, we would retain that money, but use it to help fund the position. So it would be one line item for the Board of Health. The duties would all be combined into one.
Paul, I want to thank you for the effort and the additional information, because the first pass was so generic, it was really hard to
Yeah.
tell. I mean, it was, and your report was certainly eye-opening and, for me, anyway. So I want to thank you for sending all this information. I think it was important for us to see.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we want to decide on this? I don't see why we can't decide this one right now.
We got a year and,
Well, I just want-
I beg your pardon?
we got a year.
We can move forward.
Yeah.
I understand, that,
Yeah.
no,
We're
that's
just
what I
sending
meant,
it to the
whether we-
personnel.
That we
Yeah.
decide whether we send it on to
Yeah.
personnel, and, I feel it's now right.
Can I-
Yeah, I would,
Yep.
okay.
Can I just jump in and say, if the vote is to move it on to the Personnel Board, they're going to want to see a job description that they can grade,
Okay,
Yes.
there was one
place
in
the
here.
position in the
Yeah.
appropriate pay band. So
Right.
depending on what pay band it ends up in, that may affect, well, will affect the number of hours that the position can
The number of
Provide.
hours
take
or
advantage
the
of.
amount per hour?
Well, it would affect the rate, but if the desired amount was 10 or 15,000, depending on what the rate is, you can either
Okay.
get more
Oh,
or fewer
okay.
hours out of the position.
Right, okay. Do you
Yeah.
think that this was adequate? That
No, it's in the
It's in
format,
the-
yeah.
It is
Yeah,
in here.
just wanted to get to the part that they're going to grade it, and they're going to
Right.
say, this should be,
Okay,
from A to B, and then
then we have another
that's enough.
hack at it,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And all of these are going to come back to the board at the end of
Right.
October.
right.
So this doesn't imply that you strongly support any request at this
No,
point.
but it just
It's
means
just
that-
that you're
I think we need to.
referring it to personnel to be evaluated.
I would move that we forward the request for the public health nurse to the personnel board.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion?
Well, I'd just like to say a couple things. One is, amazing job. I'm really, really, happy that we had this pilot program. I would be very, very supportive of going for another grant. But I really worry about using grants to prove the need for a role, because there's lots of roles that are out there that would be good to have, but it's, can we afford it? And, what is the relative priority of that for other things? If I look at, we have a lot of personnel requests that have been put before us. And I just don't see how we can possibly afford them all.
I think when we get them back would be the time to weigh one against the other, but I don't think we
Well, I
can do
think
that.
part of
unless-
this, though, was to try to make sure that we weren't just forwarding on all the personnel requests to the personnel board, and they do all the work, and then we don't support them. And so I don't support this. I fully support going for some more grants, continuing to do it if possible. But I don't support sending it to the personnel board and making that.
Okay. You want to continue the discussion, or do you want to?
I mean, we held up before because we didn't have sufficient
That's
information
right.
about the scope of the
Right.
job. I think we've received that, so I think I'm prepared to send it forward.
I am too. I think there's a segment of our population that are paying taxes to go support, that support a lot of this sort of thing for another segment of the population and are feeling increasingly that they're not getting what they need from their taxes, and this is what they would need. And I think we would be remiss in not giving them this service, or giving them an opportunity to get this service, so. Anyway, we have a motion on the table to forward and a second, and we've had some discussion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of forwarding?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Yay.
Okay. We have a second.
Second request of the planning board.
Request.
We'll just hear Alan from the planning board.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Madeline Blake, Carlton Road, and I'm a member of the planning board. And George Mansfield is with me to help present this. I'm in a little bit of a funny position here because our acting chair, Jonathan Stevens, wasn't able to be here tonight. He's a strong proponent of this, and our board voted 4-1 to bring this back to you. I myself probably would have been a no vote, so I'm here to answer any questions there, but I have George here to give the information on this, the background.
Well, you should have in your packets the information that was sent to you last week, as well as the original request dated August 1st, I guess it was, 2019, from at that time, the vice chair, Jonathan Stevens. He's now the acting chair since Pete Gambino resigned as of September 6th. I think one thing that you should consider here, and I guess we're kind of the last in the line in this case, because everything else has been acted on in one way or another. This has been a very difficult time for the planning board. It's a time of transition. Part of that transition is really good. In fact, probably most of it, and we hope most of it is. But it's a difficult time because both the chair and vice chair of the board have submitted their resignations this summer, and they are two of the longest serving members of the board, and they are also two of the most active members of the board. Despite coming in after David Klein's presentation and the state's presentation and hearing about the risk factors of retirement, I have been speaking about retirement for at least 3 years, and actually was making a request back in 2015 to cut back my hours so I could stay in the position longer, because I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I think what I can do for Carlisle is important. And I've been able to do that, but at the same time, the work demands themselves have been increasing. Probably more so than any time in the almost 24 years that I've been here. And secondly, we are embarking on a very major master plan development phase with a very good consultant, I believe, and a very good master plan steering committee, as well as the planning board, as well as the 40-member advisory committee, which is incredible. But all those things mean that looking forward to 2021, it's kind of a crystal ball. You don't know exactly what you're planning for in terms of the operation of the planning function of the town, or who is going to be carrying that out. But we have to make some decisions now about the positions that we think are necessary to carry that out. And this request is both my and Pete Gambino's and Jonathan Stevens' best guess as to what we will need come July 2020 and going through that next year or more. Also, one thing that you didn't ask for and therefore we didn't give you, but I'll say this because you were talking numbers, we weren't looking, as I understand it, you're really not, this is not the budgetary time, this is the position time, the personnel board time. But we did do a calculation on what the proposed increase in hours. And this is not a new position, this is not a reclassification of a position, it's simply additional hours, which we believe are necessary, or we expect they're necessary right now. We can't get them right now, but they really need to be, particularly in going out and hiring someone to replace me. I think we have to have a strong support on the part of the town to get a good person in, a good experienced and competent person in to take on that role. I think the role will be attractive. I think I'd love to come to a town when they were just embarking on or in the process of a master planning effort. But what we have calculated, strangely enough, it's very similar to what you heard from the Board of Health. In order to bring both of our current part-time positions to full-time, in one case 10 hours, in the other case 2 hours, in 2021 dollars, now projecting ahead, assuming maybe a 2% annual cost of living increase, it would cost about $15,600. So, I don't know what else you want me to say, except ask questions about the information you have.
One of the issues that continually comes up in this board is succession planning, but that doesn't seem to be addressed in your justification at all.
The primary reason that I guess I'm not really opposed, that I'm still deciding about this, I'd like us to have more process at the planning board level. I'd like to see us form a subcommittee for possibly the next 3 months with 3 people to not only look at what the workload has been for the past 3 to 4 years, but to try to think ahead. How's the work going to change? Are we still going to be doing large developments with, there's not that many large parcels of land left? The state keeps talking about changing the threshold to vote in a zoning change from 2/3 to a half. Is that, if that happens, is there going to be a groundswell of interest in having a lot of zoning law changes? And I would like us to be thoughtful about that and to think something that Nathan was just talking about. The core functions of this job are to process the applications that we get. By statute, we have to do that. But there's additional functions, participating in grants, other initiatives in town, and to think about where do we want to draw the lines around this position? Do we want to just do our core functions as best we can and focus on that and do them well? Or do we want to seek grants so that we can pursue other things that would provide more services to town but will cost more? I'd also like to see us undertake an initiative to try to identify ways to streamline our processes and be more efficient. We've got a couple of years with accessory apartments under our belt now. Maybe there's a way to make that easier to process, easier for people to do. I don't know. Maybe there isn't. But I would like us to undertake that effort. And it's just my personal opinion, I guess, that my understanding of this is that we're on a fast time frame because of the budget, that we don't necessarily need to be on that. Even if we all sit here and have agreement that the succession plan should be for a full-time planning director, we don't know at what point in the year the person would start, what rate they'd be paid at. So we can't put their salary in and plan for it a year and a half in advance. So I'm not sure that the value from acting quickly outweighs the value that we'd get from a little bit more of a deliberative process. And partly that, I have to say, is just the transition that we've had.
I guess part of it is when Pete initially came to this board and asked, I think Nathan and I were the only ones on the board at that, but we emphasized, we don't want this to just be George's hours drop, Gretchen's hours go up, and ultimately, at some point in time, we're gonna bring somebody in George's position, or George would come back and those hours would go up and we'd keep it kind of status quo. We've been pushing succession plans for Board of Health, Conscom, and you guys for 3 years, and it's a little disappointing that hasn't happened.
I'm not sure what you want for a succession plan. You want us to tell you the structure that we want for the board? I mean, that's what I'd like to do.
Yeah, essentially, so I think every department is gonna be limited to 2 resources. You're gonna be limited to an administrator and then somebody underneath that administrator, right? And ultimately, if you can get away with an administrative assistant, per se, to help that administrator, great. If not, then just, we need to build that position out more. And, for example, one of the things that we've said to Conscom, and I just know this better because I was on Conscom for 6 years, is that, the goal would be to have that second position be somebody who could, fill that role when the administrator is out. So when George is out, somebody who can really fill that role. And
We have that right now. That actually was taken care of by last year's, actually, that was 2 years ago, adjustment of grade for the assistant position. That works. That works. It's just that there's more of it to do. The level of work is working.
Well, certain things. I think it depends on who you ask, right? And ultimately, I think, and that's the evaluation that we truly need.
Well, I'm saying that I'm there day to day, and that's why,
Yeah.
If you ask people who aren't, they may have different answers, but it is working. It's just working at a level where we can't do things as well as we would like to do them because we don't have time to do it.
Yeah, well, that's what we hear from Board of Health, and that's what we hear from Conscom, too.
That's true. I agree.
Right, and
we should exchange information upstairs, and
no, exactly, and but also too, it's really, I think we've asked each board to really come back with a true solution, and nobody really has. You know, I mean, we can't tell you how to structure your group, your board, right? You know, because you guys know, and the board knows better than anybody, the functions that you do, you know, the two positions that you truly need. I mean, if you think you can get away with, you know, the two people that are there now, then justify that, you know, but ultimately too, you know, you're gonna retire at some point, much like Sylvia's gonna retire, Linda's
I'm
gonna
going to
retire.
retire before the fiscal year we're talking about starts. That I know.
Okay, then.
Okay.
So then I think we gotta get to this a little quicker.
That's the problem.
Right, but, well, okay. So then, I mean, I guess the succession time is now, right?
But I have to.
But this is what we
add
wanted to
that this
avoid.
is- It's not that this hasn't been discussed, particularly Pete and I discussed that a lot, but he was also focused on getting the master plan program started. He was also focused on personal, his own business and so forth, and it never, you know, never made a decision.
And so I think one of the things about the planning of this is, you know, do we add hours to roles now? Or do we think about what might be needed in order to attract a successor to George, right?
I want to be clear, this isn't a request to adding hours now. It's only adding hours in fiscal 2021.
We understand that.
Yeah, yeah.
But when we say now, we mean.
Now is.
My head is already in July of next year.
Yes.
Because that's what we're talking about here, is
Yeah.
July of next year, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is making your position full-time 35 again, and Gretchen's position?
Mine was never 35, but yes. It was 32,
And what are you now?
25.
25.
25.
So it's 12 additional hours
Yes, yeah.
between the two positions.
Yeah.
I'll just, as somebody new to the board and new to this whole process, I have to say I am appreciative of Madeline, of your comments about wanting to really analyze what is the workload and are there ways to streamline it and, you know, really what is needed in terms of staffing. And I don't know what the, you know, what happens should we not have made a change in the staffing, if we leave it as is, and then we get to next year and we're looking to hire somebody, but it seems to me we ought to, unless others say, no, we've already been through this and we know that this is what we want, it's a really reasonable approach.
It seems to me, though, like, if we're gonna have to hire a new administrator next year, what the discussion should be is, what is that gonna cost? How is that going to look? And understand that piece of it and how we're going to try to fill George's shoes. And because that may dictate some of what we can do with that other role. Because I know that when we increased Gretchen's role, we softened the blow of that because you were reducing your hours. This is going to full-time on both of them. But we don't, you know, I don't know, like, what is it gonna take for us to attract a planning administrator here? What is that gonna look like from a cost perspective?
That we can't know until we set a number and a job description and, you know.
And I'm saying we should do that.
That's
That's
what-
exactly what I'm saying we should do.
Yeah, I agree.
And
And
we
this
should
is
do
not it.
Yeah, and we
This
should
is
do it
not-
really,
Right.
really soon, so that we understand what to put in the budget. And we should focus
Yeah.
on that.
I agree. Can't, yes.
So that would be recommending that the personnel board look at what we would put up as a salary and a job description
No, it
for
means
a new,
recommending that the planning board do their, what Madeline was proposing, basically.
come back with
And
a
coming back with a job description.
and a cost.
And a cost for the succession.
And I think in our heads, we have to be, kind of
Right.
know that there's probably gonna be some kind of a budget impact on the
Yeah.
schools. I have no idea what
Right.
it is right now.
Yes.
Right.
But
Well, and we always kind of assume that, you know, in these transition years when, you know, the current administrators decide, you know, there is going to be some sort of transition period, and that's just going to be a cost that we
Yes.
have to.
Exactly.
We have to absorb, you know.
yeah.
There are, of course, 2 seats on the planning board that we don't know who's going to be sitting in them
It's true
as well. So,
Well, let's get cracking on that.
believe me,
Yeah, no.
that's up to the people in the town. I can't.
Yes, no.
I think we just randomly select right now.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I'm sure you're already working hard on that on the planning board, so.
A lot to do.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
Does that put us, planning board, can we appoint for the rest of the year?
we'd have to do it
Or
jointly.
do we have to have a
with-
special election?
No, you appoint,
joint.
once the planning board officially notifies you of vacancies, which will happen next week when the planning board meets, there's a joint meeting has to be scheduled. 1 week's notice has to be given of the joint meeting, and then the 2 boards together, the remaining members of the planning board and your board, 5 and 5, can meet together and appoint.
Make appointments.
But,
Yes.
but the key thing is having people who are willing
Right.
to
Yes.
accept the appointment.
And we have to wait for the planning board to tell us that the vacancies are there,
Yes, you do.
even though we've already accepted the resignations? as
The
a
planning board hasn't yet notified you. They have
Yeah.
30 days from the resignation,
We
each
have,
resignation to
We have
notify.
Jonathan's right here, and we
Yeah.
had,
Yeah.
we have Pete
Jonathan-
Gambino's
Gambino's.
last meeting.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got that.
But it's a
Jonathan's
different
is effective
statute.
October 3rd, I think.
But the planning board has to do
The
an
planning board is
additional
going to, the
step.
planning board is going to take that step next Monday night. You'll get notification
Okay.
next week.
If they don't, you
That's
can make the
because the
appointment.
chair was, had
If they
resigned and they
don't,
handed
then
up.
If they don't, then the Board of
We
Selectmen
could make
makes
the
the
appointment
one.
on our own.
Only one of the 2, because that's the only one where the month will run out.
Well, let's send a
It's not
memo
gonna
to the
happen.
board. and-
Yes.
It's not going to
okay.
happen. They're going to
Okay.
notify you.
So let's move ahead.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we have, we need a motion here about this particular
All right,
packet.
Did everybody get Peter Yell's letter that he
Yeah.
sent?
yes.
Set on our table.
Well, what we're doing is we're going to not approve sending this proposal to the Personnel Board,
You're
right?
making that
That's-
motion?
Well, I'm just, that's my
We can do it
question. Is that
either
what
way.
we
You
need?
can- You can do it either way.
Do it either way.
That you
Okay.
can
We can vote in
move
the,
Or we
we can
want-
say it in the affirmative and vote.
Yeah,
against
No?
it,
Yeah.
or we can say in the negative and
I
vote
mean,
yes.
I think we probably should do it as, I move that we vote to move the position onto the planning board for additional hours for planning administrator and assistant. And then,
And
and then
then-
we vote appropriately,
Yes.
because that's what this was,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So we have a motion made now by Nathan.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Unintentional motion, but there it is.
I'll second it.
And Luke seconded it. Is there any further discussion?
Then it would have failed for lack of.
and I'm
Yeah, but
sorry,
it's
so
better.
what is
So
our
we're-
motion
If you don't
saying?
want to do it, you say nay.
Yeah,
If I don't
if you
want it
wanna
to
do
go
it,
to
you
the
say yeah.
Personnel Board?
right.
Okay.
Because the motion was to send it to
To-
personnel.
Okay, thank you very much.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay.
Nay.
That was-
Okay, good discussion.
The other board has
Other Board of Health addition?
Yep.
I just said public health nurse,
Right.
planning board.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, so there is no
Okay.
other planning board, Board of Health.
The other Board of Health one was previously forwarded to personnel. That's
Yeah,
already in
the
front
other
of
one
us.
That's already there.
already
Okay.
went,
All right,
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Linda's already met with the personnel board on that.
Okay. All right, we have the 2 chiefs here, whom I assume are here for the special town meeting warrant discussion,
David, too.
and David, yes,
Bill.
and Bill.
Oh, he's a figurehead.
Bill's a silent partner.
Silent partner.
So we've done that.
Did you turn the heat down? Or maybe it's just that location. Jeez. I was sweating earlier.
That was awful. I haven't made that investment yet, so. So, David Friedman, Hutchins Road, the de facto coordinator of the working group that is working on the public safety communication system implementation since the 2017 annual town meeting authorization and appropriation. And we are here to ask for the selectmen's support for Article 5 at the special town meeting on October 7th.
Five?
And
Yeah.
supplied
Oh,
with
it's on the other side. Communications tower, yeah.
a range of materials over the last several meetings, one document just prior to this meeting, and happy to answer any questions you have. Before doing that, I sort of want to sort of be clear that, as we said when we first came to you in May, which was very soon after we got the communication through town council that about the lease issues, we came to you within a couple weeks of that, having miraculously found the alternative site and asked your permission to investigate that site in order to find out whether it was viable, because we knew there were wetlands on the site. But we were clear at that time that although the red flag was the unexpected commercial or close to commercial rate lease rental, that the core problem was with the leases themselves and the lack of control over the site. We met last night with the Finance Committee, and the 5 members that were there voted unanimously to support this article. They basically stated that, and we agreed completely, that it's the standard in Carlisle to have budget items be done at annual town meeting should be met at all costs, and that they basically concluded that were this to come as part of everything else, this would be one of the, if not the top priority item then, and therefore they, viewed it as okay in the same way that they did on the elevator at the school, that, I think Scott Triola said sometimes these things just come up and need to be dealt with, and they agreed that this was that, but they're going to be clear, I believe through a statement at town meeting, that, this plus, and I don't know how much the elevator was, but whatever that dollar amount is, that as far as they're concerned, that's already part of the 2021 budget, and that money is already appropriated, and, everybody coming in between now and the close of the warrant and the close of the budget is going to be looking at a, whatever the percentage of tax rate they want to look at, but is going to be looking at an amount that's reduced by those things. But that they agreed, in talking to them, sort of went back over the history of this project, and, they supported, and I believe the selectmen have supported every step of this process, even back to the reappropriation of the $150,000 for the original tower that was proposed at the school, and reallocating that to the study that was done that recommended that we have a public safety communication system, and particularly the 2017 appropriation for this project, and that essentially, if the FinCom and if the selectmen believe that public safety and providing proper communications, which is the sort of number one requirement for public safety people in the field, that if it was appropriate to vote to appropriate just under $3 million for that in 2017, not supporting this essentially undoes that work and is sort of stepping away from that commitment. So we also think, the 2017 vote was not quite unanimous. There were maybe, the Mosquito said there were a handful of no votes, but it is our sense that the community, nothing's changed in the community in terms of understanding of the importance of this and providing our first responders with the tools they need to do their job safely and to protect lives and property in the community safely. So we hope that you will follow in FinCom's footsteps and vote to support this.
All right. Any questions?
We've been through all this time and time again.
Okay. So, we need to vote on our articles.
Each one individually?
I think we should
Okay.
vote on them individually.
I move the Board of Selectmen support Article 5 for vote at the special town meeting.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to also mention, I don't know that you necessarily want to deal with this, but one of the abutters has indicated that she's going to propose an amendment on the floor of town meeting to limit the use of this tower to just public safety. And if, I don't know that the selectmen would, sort of take a position in that moment at town meeting. And so the Khan article in last week's Mosquito implied that this group had been dodging the question about co-location and also suggested that we had been not honest about the fact that the tower elevation shows 2 positions below where our antennas are, and that clearly that's meant for commercial cellular. And I wanted to be clear to you that that's not what those are showing. This tower is a solid steel tube and cannot take internal antennas. That is what the bylaw requires for commercial cellular. Those sites that were shown on that was what they do as a standard when they're doing these drawings. But for this type of tower, the only thing they would be able to take would be external antennas, which were shown in case any neighboring communities, public safety departments were interested in co-locating on that tower. So there is no presupposed or pre-thought plan to have commercial cellular there. We, as part of the whole process, we looked and have had discussions with Concord where they are allowing us to co-locate on their Nursnack Tower, and through their support, because the Middlesex Tower that's still in litigation, but the town of Concord and their public safety has a role there, and they're working with us also to be on that tower. We wanted to make that same thing possible, at least for other public safety in neighboring communities. It was something we looked at also at Proctor Road, and nobody's taken us up on it and said, yes, we definitely want to do it, but that's why that was shown there. That said, we haven't, we don't have, our role is to make sure the public safety system gets done. This is a public safety tower. So individually, board members, view would be that it doesn't make sense to limit the use going forward. The public safety, the personal safety issues that people have about whether they're cellular here are not based on science, that basically the safety margin for I think a 10-channel commercial cellular thing putting out 10,000 watts at any distance from this tower is, depending upon where you are relative to it, and it varies, it goes up and then down and up and down, but it's 100 at its lowest amount relative to the threshold that the FCC sets. it's even a 10,000 watt cellular tower at the distance where there is the most exposure, it's 100,000 times more than the limit that the FCC has as a safety limit for this. So it's 3 orders of magnitude, or 4 or 5 orders. 100,000 less, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
What is his point?
100,000 times lower than the threshold at, I think it's at some distance away. At the base of the tower, it's like 1 million times more. Less.
Well, that's because they go out this way, they don't go straight
Right.
down, so that's
So
why.
actually, when you
you're
get
actually
further
shel-
away, there's a
you're
point where
actually
it goes up
sheltered.
slightly, but even at the greatest,
Another way of saying it is that it's way less than their cell phone that they've got in their pocket, which is radiating right into their skin.
dramatically less.
So-
And basically, the FCC is the only sort of health concern is for someone who's working at that. So from a health concern, there's no reason for the selectmen to take a position that we would restrict this. And I would also want to point out 2 other things. One is that one of the reasons that we're having the issues we're having at 1022 is that it was the first tower that we permitted in town. And the bylaw was written very restrictively to try to limit everything to 80 feet. And it was limited to no more than 1 10-foot extension. And even public safety had to be within the monopole, which I was chair of the planning board and didn't know at the time that public safety antennas don't work inside a monopole. But to some degree, the restrictions that we self-imposed on that because of abutter concerns at that time have limited our ability to move this forward. And the other thing I would say is our wireless bylaw that doesn't affect public safety but would apply to any extension to this for commercial cellular sets up what the preferred types of facilities that the town would like to see. And the second to lowest of those preferred is, actually the third to lowest of those is co-locating on a existing tower. Below that is building a new tower on town land, and below that is building a new tower on private property. So that by voting or taking a position to support that motion, essentially what you're doing is going against the intent of the bylaw, which is to limit more towers, et cetera, et cetera. So if you were to take a position on it, those are the reasons why there's no basis, aside from the potential revenue for the town, which
If it's
could
public
be.
safety, I'm assuming we wouldn't have any.
No, but if,
Oh, but if
once
it
it's
did-
built,
Commercial.
once it's
Commercial.
built, it's an existing
Right,
tower,
okay,
and
all right.
no, I didn't mean for helping out our
Okay.
public safety in another community. I said if somebody came to the town and the town was interested in leasing an extension to this, the town could, perhaps get significant revenue. And again, that's not part of what we're proposing, just
But we shouldn't cut
if you
our options.
Yeah.
Especially when it's not science-based.
Yes.
Yeah, and just a quick question, David. The description of this particular cell tower and and the limits on it, have you gone over that with the abutters?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I've
Yeah,
made
okay.
myself available to them. Well, no, since Nancy wrote her article, I have
Yeah.
not spoken. I thought perhaps she would be here. There have been a couple times when she has made statements that I sat down with them and explained that those were not true statements, and they continue to make those statements. So I can reach out to Nancy and explain to her that those 2 slots do not mean what she thinks they mean.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's fine.
I think it would be useful to
Sure.
pass that on.
I would have
She did
appreciated
come
before putting that over that
Yeah.
she'd come to
Yeah,
me and said, what do these things mean? And I could have given her that answer instead of jumping to the conclusion that we've
Yeah.
basically been lying about it.
I'd also recommend that for town meeting, you come with the actual data on that you talked about earlier on the safety levels,
Yeah, I mean, it,
just in case.
yes. I mean, the amount with which it's below the
The threshold
concern
value,
is
yeah.
so
But also, we're
great.
not proposing Mr. Cellular.
I
Yeah,
understand,
There
but
will be a
but that's,
separate
but.
decision made at the approximately.
At the time,
If there is,
yeah,
if there
if
is
and
an
when-
amendment
yes.
proposed, we should be
And-
prepared to
right.
address it.
yes,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The amendment would be to
prohibit.
preclude
Yeah.
any, ever, and I think that would be short-sighted of us.
Yeah.
Especially if the town was gonna last 50-plus years.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
would you restrict the town?
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Makes sense.
Okay.
thank you for your vote, and,
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
you.
Thank you.
Oh, one last thing,
that was a-
at the last meeting, when you set the date for this, right after that, I pointed out that that date was gonna be a good date to do the public info session
Yeah.
on
You seen
the
that?
complete streets.
Yes.
And the
New $8
mosquito
million. They just opened it 2 weeks ago.
misreported that
Very nice.
what I had said was that we were gonna do a public info session prior to October 7th about the public safety, which we're not planning on doing. So just to the degree anybody's paying attention, there was a conflation of those things. The public info session is about the
Complete streets.
Complete streets.
Which is sort of about public safety, but at a different.
very different. Anyway,
Okay.
But,
All right.
unless you felt that there was some need for us to do, all we would do is do the town meeting presentation ahead of time, and
We've already been through the planning board public.
yes, we have. Oh, the other thing I would let you know is that
Been a public
it
hearing.
was
You guys are better
appealed.
off just walking, because he's
Uh,
just gonna keep going.
This is, I want to be as transparent and clear about everything, so that, anytime anything isn't said, I get grief for it, so. The Conscom order of conditions was appealed.
Yes, oh, yeah.
And Tim has reached out to DEP, and there's a good chance that we'll have their decision prior to the town meeting. So
Oh, that would be good.
That would be good, and anybody that's looked at it who has been through these things is quite confident that
So, and a butter appealed it, or?
a butter appeal.
Okay.
Anyways, quite confident that the whatever DEP comes back with, it's not going to keep us from being able to do this.
All right,
Yeah,
good, thank you.
Thanks.
Yep, thanks.
All right, we have some other articles. We might as well
Yep.
do those at the same time.
Last night, the Finance Committee voted to support all of the articles. However, they did ask regarding Article 1, if the board would consider not moving that at this town meeting, and instead waiting until the annual town meeting in the spring to make the budget adjustment. You'll recall, this is the article that would adjust the vocational education budget, because we found out over the summer we had 3
Right.
students going to Minuteman instead
yeah.
of 2.
Yeah.
Priscilla's been unable to get financial information out of Minuteman, so we don't have the numbers right now. So the Finance Committee would prefer to wait until the spring when we know what the actual shortfall is, and by means of a
Okay.
transfer, handle it then. So that if the board wants to go forward with it, they support it, but they ask that you not move it respectfully, so.
We can do the same, right? We can support it.
Yeah,
Oh,
and just
we
choose
can
not to
still
move
put
it.
I think it
If
should
that's
still
the-
go on the warrant, and we can choose not to move it, but we can't do either if something happens between
on the
now and
warrant- it's on the
then.
warrant
I was
now.
gonna say, we've already closed it, right?
Yeah, the warrant's posted, but you don't have to move it.
We don't have to
at
move it.
town meeting,
Yeah.
take no
Yeah.
action, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
I move that the board support Article 1, adjustments to the FY 2020 operating budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Did you just say we're gonna support it?
Yeah, he
Yeah, we're
just
just
did.
not gonna move it, but in case,
We have to-
what if somebody gets up and moves it, right?
Oh, I
We
guess,
have a
okay.
position.
Yeah.
Same person that's gonna ask the question about the science.
All right, so, was there a second to that? I'm sorry. We
Oh,
heard
yes,
it.
I
Motion,
seconded
you
it.
seconded it. No further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
And we're not gonna move it, right?
and we're not gonna move it, unless there's some reason to move it later. I mean, we never know.
Okay. I move that the Board of Selectmen support Article 2, acceptance of 4th paragraph of Mass General Law, Chapter 41, subsection 111F, Injured on Duty Indemnity Fund.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Everybody understands what it is? All those in favor?
Aye.
I move that the Board of Selectmen support Article 3, Department Revolving Funds Bylaw.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor?
I move the Board of Selectmen support Article 4, Capital Equipment. A total of $93,000.
Yes.
Have I been
Why-
sleeping? When did
yes,
this?
when did this come? I was
Yeah.
just saying.
No, this,
It was-
if you remember, this is not actually changing the numbers at all. It's the way it was worded.
Oh.
Town council
town
wanted
meeting.
us to.
Oh, this is
Okay,
the one that
thank
never
you.
actually appeared here. It was always just,
Yes.
it was always
Yes,
just the,
it was
We
okay.
had
always.
this before us last time, exactly as it
Yeah.
is now.
Well, it didn't have the
but-
table.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
did.
Did it?
Well, anyway,
It did.
okay.
But we're not,
Well, maybe it-
we're not voting 93,000 more dollars.
No, it's the way it was
It was
worded.
just
to-
rewording it.
Gotcha.
Right.
It wasn't effective the first time.
Second.
It was the 2/3 vote versus.
Yeah,
Yes,
this is.
yes, yes.
That's right.
Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
And we already did number 5.
I caught Chief Fisher, so he could speak to Article 2 if you wanted to hear from him on the 111F change.
Well, we
I think we
understand.
understand it.
We're already supporting
We
it.
supported it. That's good, because I really
You want
do
us to not
appreciate
support it?
I'm sorry I didn't foresee that you should have.
We discussed it
No,
last
we-
meeting.
Really, that makes things a lot easier.
Of course, it
Yeah,
makes.
it's very clear.
It's
Because now
totally,
we do this, we'll have no one injured for the next 10 years.
Right.
By doing this, you're basically insured smooth sailing.
Good,
Have a good night.
You buy a new
All right,
snowblower.
thanks.
It's not gonna snow anymore that winter. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
All
Let's
right, good.
circle back to number 4, just make sure we don't forget it.
Do we have to sign something on this? Do we have to pass around something we signed
No,
for
no,
this?
you already signed the
Got
warrant.
the signatures, but okay.
So,
Okay.
I asked Chief Sorrows if he would stick around as well. He has actually a request to make of the board, so
Okay,
Okay,
we
why
can
don't
do
we
that next, and then he can go
let
home.
him do that then?
Yeah.
sure. Do you want a copy of the articles?
Oh, the warrant?
Would you like a copy of,
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
yeah. And so it's Article number 1 is the one that's not going to be moved at the meeting. Yeah. Hi.
Hello. Back.
They have copies, or are they?
No, that's actually hot off the press. We don't have copies yet, but we can make them if.
Yep, that's great. So, okay,
Launch in,
so
yeah.
we have the opportunity to have a building for training. We know the Highland building pretty well. We know the fire station pretty well at this point. We've run lines up, down the stairs, and in and out, and all over the place. It's nice that this won't be broadcast, because this is going to be a surprise.
It is being
currently.
broadcast.
Well, hopefully nobody will see it. 'Cause hopefully this will be a surprise.
One person watching.
Yeah, hopefully this will be a surprise. But in any case, we have the opportunity to have a building to use, 21-23 Bedford Road, that will be torn down soon. And so the owner would like us to, well, both on our end, this is a release that he's not going to come after us for the damage we do to his building. But similarly, if we, for whatever reason, had an injury, we would not blame that on their building. So that's what this is about.
2123 is the building across from the library.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is a surprise.
You don't plan to light it
you all
on
know this
fire,
was
do
coming?
you?
No, so that's what
I
that,
didn't
so.
know the training was coming, but I knew it was coming down.
Yeah, no, I knew it was coming down.
So we will not be lighting anything on fire. So doing that
Okay.
is a whole big process. If we ever do that, that's a whole big
Okay.
process.
A little close to
For us,
times.
it's, it's the ability to, the worst we might do is use a smoke machine to just make it not visible. But the, ability to take a hose down into the basement and put out a flashlight and go, whatever.
Flashlights.
You get the idea,
Yeah.
but the ability to do a search
Yeah,
for people
yeah,
and
yeah.
find them and all of these kinds of things, it's great to do that in a commercial building again and again and again, but it's also very different to do that in an old house. There's even things like building construction of a building like that is very different than many of the places we can train. So this can be great for us, you know, the ability, they are happy for us to breach walls, you know, any of those kinds of things. And there aren't many places where we get that opportunity where people say, yes, go ahead and, you know, plaster and lathe, good, solid construction to work in.
Sounds good.
Town council prepared the waiver and release form, so
Right.
it's been vetted through.
And it's a two-way waiver.
Yes.
Yes,
Right.
great.
Great, and when are you thinking of doing this?
To be honest with you, we do second and fourth Wednesdays of every month in the evening, we do training, which is tomorrow.
Okay.
Get some
And so one of our
Good thing you were
problems
leaving.
is that they would like to be on a fairly aggressive schedule to get moving. And so
To do it tomorrow.
we would like to do, so we may get a couple of trainings out of it, but it's not like we're going to have it for months
Yeah.
to work with.
Yeah.
So who's bringing the marshmallows?
What did you say?
Who's bringing the marshmallows?
Bring the kids, they'll sit across the street.
Back when we used to be able to do
Set fires.
fires, that was very useful, but it's hard to do now. If we ever do it, it's going to be a process.
You have to
Place
get
would go up
state
like
permission,
that.
or-
That place would
So
have
everything's
Oh, yeah, that would-
DEP to,
That wood is
um,
so dry.
Uh-huh.
We had it done.
and then there's a lot of prep you have to do, preparation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
After the Amish,
All right, well, good.
everything out of it that they-
Thank you.
Oh, really?
Oh, while you're here, we're reviewing policies, and tonight, we're gonna do mileage reimbursement rate, but, you know, because that's an easy one. But another one is number 7, our ambulance fee in our policy book, I think is from 1989 or something like that. Is there some generic way we could write the policy so that it, or
I have
To
not
post-
even seen it, so
well,
I,
number 7 says, in 77, voted to set the preliminary fee for use of the new ambulance at $45 per trip, and in 2481, voted to raise the ambulance rates to $75 effective March 1st, 1981. That's our policy.
well, that's not what we're following right now,
Yeah, what are we
So,
charging?
If you could,
over 1,000.
first of all, we need to know that. I mean, there should be either
so
this, or we should
maybe-
take this policy out.
What do we need that policy? That's what
Well, I mean, you know,
That should just be,
Just to
you should just be able
fire
to approve
department
the
thing.
rates whenever they change. Yeah.
So we're doing it based on the Samara with Pro EMS to meet the requirements for paying them for ALS. So we're kind of locked into that structure, and
so.
it's just been through, and it's not
Our
that.
policy is to set the rate at that structure. So if we could
Right.
have that, that's how the policy should read.
Right.
And then, so if you could just draft that up for me, or for Tim, and then we can stick that in there instead of this.
Yes.
That would really be helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
That sounds much better.
Okay, so it's it's kind of more
Right.
what it's
generic.
based on, generic
Yeah.
is the
Right.
wrong word, but
But,
you know what I'm
right.
getting at.
Very good.
Okay,
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Does this stay here with?
Well, so we can,
We can,
yeah,
Yeah.
copy tomorrow.
it's the intimidation factor.
Okay.
Thanks. Yep.
All right. Now, we can go and do the parking lot reconstruction contract.
Thank you.
All right, you'll recall, we discussed this somewhat at the last meeting, and we have to defer it to this meeting since it's a lot of money, and we don't usually approve things, yeah, that aren't on the agenda. Valid point, so, and once again, by approving it, the board still kind of holds the keys to the car here, that only under a notice to proceed from the selectmen does the paving project happen, and the understanding is that only happens if the solar project is happening. And the board can terminate the contract for convenience, which is really any any reason, not for breach or not for anything specific, but if it's in the town's best interest, which, if there were no solar projects, I think decision, or the FinCom and Selectmen decided that that would be a no-go for the paving, so. But it sounds like the Amoresco thing is moving along with the planning board, and I talked to George earlier, and, you know, it all looks pretty good at this point, so.
Yeah, and ultimately, the 220 is less than what was actually approved at town meeting, right?
It was 250, yeah, so.
So that's good.
It
That's a
might be.
plus.
And they've agreed to hang on to that
Right,
price even though our
exactly.
things,
Yeah, but they-
so, I mean,
But they
would
do
like
wanna
not
see a
to.
contract, so we'll get
Yes.
them the contract and say, this is the price if we go forward.
Yep.
And they understand that. They do want to do it right, you know, over the summer after school gets out, which coincides with, maybe we'll discuss this later. The complete streets schedule is kind of in the same ballpark, so
Yeah.
we could have a lot of activity here
Yeah.
next summer, but.
A lot of paving.
So I move the Board of Selectmen vote to award contract to Sunshine Paving Corporation, 89 Meadowbrook Road, North Chelmsford, Massachusetts, in the amount of $220,000, and to authorize the chair or the town administrator to sign contract documents. The work of said contract shall not commence until a notice to proceed has been issued, which is expected no sooner than the spring of 2020.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Another job, well done. We're down to town government organization policy and bylaw review. As you will recall, at one point, a few weeks ago, we got a letter from town council saying that, you know, we had several different ways of operating, and one is we just could authorize Tim to do various things. And at that point, I think I asked Tim if he could give me a list of things that he thought would be nice to be authorized to do. And what he did was he gave me a letter that he had written in February of 2016 to a previous board, and, which is in your packet. That's this thing, Town Administrator Outline of Administrative Changes. And when I read it, I didn't really see anything in it that I thought wasn't a very reasonable request. And so I thought we could discuss/authorize our town administrator to do some of these functions for us.
And some of them we're already doing, so.
Some of them, we've
Yeah.
already, yes,
Yeah,
the
we've
one
already
that
done it,
we're doing is, you know,
Which one?
we're working on the personnel policies and procedures,
But
and procurement he's already doing,
procurement, recruitment,
and recruitment.
administrative, with the respect to approving payroll and timesheets, I do that for all but 3 departments now. We tried to get it town hall wide, and 3 departments resisted, but I do approve the timesheets for the department heads and all of the other departments.
Right.
So I
This
think just take maybe a little nudge to get everybody under the same.
would prevent us from having to
Umbrella.
also race in
Right.
so that people can get paid, you know,
Right. Or volunteer board chairs that, you know,
yeah.
always come in to.
Yeah, I
They don't
too
really know
read
what
this
they're
over,
saying.
and I saw nothing in here that gives me any concern whatsoever.
There are a couple of things that I just wanted to chat about.
Sure.
One is, in the sense, so overall, I think this is great. There are just 2 that jumped out at me. One is in the second bullet, I totally agree with implementing personnel policies and procedures, including discipline, performance evaluation. But in compensation, according to approved compensation classification plan, I'm not sure, does that mean that you would be able to like move somebody from one grade to another, or I'm
No, I
not
mean,
exactly
it
sure.
really-
How often do you do this anyway? Because don't we just do this once a year?
Correct. It's more working with the personnel board when there's a new position created or a new hire, as far as slotting a person into the chart. So maybe that's not, it's a little imprecise, the language, but
Yeah, well, it
it's
reads to
mostly
me like
working
there's
with the.
like some, I would just want to make sure that if there's a change in somebody's compensation, that we were involved in that.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's not intended that I would arbitrarily move
It's
people
according to
around.
approved compensation plans.
Right.
Yeah, but we approve compensation plans like we did that like at the beginning of the year.
So we only do
New
it
rates,
once.
yeah.
So if it's to the, I guess I'm not sure what's being done here. Because once a year, we approve the compensation plan and who's in it.
Right. Right. I think it was more along the lines of the work that I do with the personnel board, and when they create a new position or regrade a position, and, or someone's hired into a new,
I think
from
the key word here is implement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not,
As we approve, we
Implement
approve the plan
compensation.
and the classification.
change the
and then
plan.
he
According to
implements
the
it.
approved
Right.
compensation classification plan.
I can work on rewording it if that, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
intended.
No,
that
I
it's
think
just
the
gonna-
implement is the key.
Yeah.
I think Alan's got it. Yeah.
Well, and I think we'll also be clarifying a lot of that when when we finish doing this bylaw, the other personnel bylaw and procedures, is to clarifying Tim's position there. So if you want, we could take this one out if we're going to, like, say, okay, now we're going to authorize you this, and then we can work on refining what he's meaning here in that other policy. But the goal is to give Tim more authority in the personnel, and not just responsibility, but the authority to make it clear that people have to come to him, for that the chairs of other boards and committees have to come to him
Right.
to help with the reviews, the annual reviews and things like that, because right now, they don't feel like they have to. And so we're
I have
trying
to
I'd be
to,
totally
rework it.
comfortable with this one if there's a period at the end of the performance evaluations.
okay.
Just because
period.
it's not clear to me what that last part
All
even
right.
means.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's just do
Just
that.
take out the
and
and
compensation.
Right.
compensation.
Let's just,
Okay,
okay,
Obviously, we'd have to add an and.
right. So just take that out, that second
Yeah.
part.
And then the second thing is, obviously, I'm focused on money here. The $10,000, I'm not sure how I feel about all the department heads being able to authorize, I mean, that's a lot of money. I'd prefer to just give that all to Tim.
Oh,
What's
gee,
the
well, this
thinking
is what we're
behind
doing
this?
now, though. This is how we're currently doing it, right?
Well, we do have procurement policy. That's the minimum threshold under the state procurement guidelines, that you can purchase anything without getting more than one quote, up to 10,000, 10 to 50,000,
But
you
you're
need
the
to get
purchasing
three.
agent. The individual department heads can't do it. They have to go to you.
They can only do it if I authorize them to do it.
Right.
this
And
makes it
is-
sound like-
This is saying
yeah.
that they can do it directly now.
right.
No, only if I,
That's not what
I
this
can-
is.
This would
It
change
says
that.
they can
Yeah, this
have
changes that.
procurement
Yeah.
authority
Delegate
for
authority
up to
to them.
10,000, and then you'd have authority over 10,000
Yeah,
for
so this-
contracts.
Right.
So you don't,
Well, I
but
think, well, I'd have to look at our policy might say that too, so if that's not the intention, the policy would have to be
I don't think so,
changed
and I
too.
have the policy here.
Yeah, I mean, I can work on that, make sure it's not inconsistent.
consistent with the Board of Selectmen's policy on procurement of goods and services.
Or you could just lower, I mean, it doesn't, the state guideline is 10, you could lower the threshold to 2,500 or 5 or any other.
But that's the state
Under-
guideline for what we've given you.
Right.
My question isn't at all the authority that you have.
Okay.
My question is the authority that the individual department heads have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, you could say 2,500 or 50, you could make it a different,
Let's make it, okay,
100?
I agree with you. I thought that was what we were
300.
doing now, because,
something, yeah.
and because we may not hire them, but the person that we are trying to hire, that,
For finance?
no, for
Procurement and
for-
projects.
It would be
yeah.
a procurement and grants writer. It would make even more sense to not have the individual heads doing their own procurement, since we're gonna have a sub-procurement officer. It's funny, it's not, I don't see procurement in our policy.
Got to give all that stuff back, Tim.
That's right.
Okay. All right,
I can shoot you a copy of that we do have, might not have made it into the books, but we do have a procurement policy.
I know, but I don't
Yeah.
see it. in here.
So what,
thought I read it.
what would you do on this particular one then that says
I
about
would take it out
procurement?
because I think that Tim already has all the authority.
And
And
we
this
don't
was
want-
delegating some authority to department heads.
Which
Right.
we don't want to do.
Okay.
Okay, that's
All
fine.
right, so that's gone.
I didn't pay much attention to it because I thought that was how we had it, we were just doing, but that wasn't really a change.
All the rest of them, I think are great.
Okay,
So,
so,
no, just one other thing, speaking of salaries and compensation and whatnot, we did just, and this might not be a good time to say it with Tim sitting in the room, but we did just renegotiate a contract, 5-year contract with him, and now we're actually throwing more onto his plate. So.
Good thing we did it
but
in that
I
order.
asked for it.
Phew, yeah.
Right, so,
Right.
so, but I
Wasn't
mean,
that smart of us?
yeah.
well, you know what, I think we can talk about that in.
Yeah, it's
at an
not a
annual
discussion,
review.
right, it's not a discussion for tonight.
Yeah.
But it's just something that I think we should truly
A very
consider
good point.
because that would be a not-so-kind thing
Yeah.
to do.
Well, on the other hand, I feel that we also, in certain respects, making his job easier, because when you have
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
responsibility with no authority, it
Well,
makes the
no, I
job
agree,
impossible to do.
I'm not giving anything back, so.
He's always had the responsibility, he just hasn't had the authority.
Just has the authority, right. But it, I mean, it's gonna create more headaches, it's gonna
Yes.
create,
Right.
some,
So do we need,
We'll bring that up at his next contract negotiation.
there you go. In 5 years.
now that we've amicably come to this decision, what do we do with it? How do we codify this and memorialize it and, so that everybody knows about this? And do we,
Just add it to his job description, clearly.
Yeah.
Tack it onto the,
okay.
And we can just
But
put a
I'm-
note on the
I'm also
door.
thinking in terms of policy, because I
Yeah.
want people to understand
Right.
the policy around
Yeah.
it.
Well, maybe it needs to be, we have a meeting with the administrators and the chairs of the boards.
Okay.
I mean, we bring in kind of the
That,
key
you know, this
personnel.
public outreach thing, that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
okay.
I
Okay.
think that it's important to, I would think that it would be important not to focus just on those bullets, but focus more on kind of overall, like, Tim's role.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, no.
and then say, and, we've added these things to it, but overall, this is Tim's role, and we support him in that role.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Right, and I think it needs to be made clear that you have 100% support of the board to do these things.
appreciate that.
Well, I guess you have 20% support. I can't speak for every, but you know what I mean. Because, again, it's one of those things if you go to implement some of these and
Yeah, you
and
gotta,
people fluff you off and we just don't back you,
Already,
it
Yeah.
defeats the
exactly.
purpose, so,
Right?
yep.
Okay. Thank you. So that was one thing under there. Mileage reimbursement rate, yeah, that was one of the ones that, was like at 11 cents a mile or
Yeah, I kind of
whatever.
like that, though.
And so we rewrote it to say, transportation expenses paid or incurred by departments under the authority of the board or selectmen shall be reimbursed at the current IRS standard mileage rate.
Even-
Which is
even-
what
Even
right
for a
now?
Chevy Bolt?
It's like
Even
50
for a Chevy Bolt.
55 or 57 cents.
Yeah, it's
something.
like
58
Bolt
cents.
being
Miles this
discontinued.
year.
Yeah, thank you.
So are we actually only reimbursing at
No, the
22 and a half
The
cents
Bolt
right
is
now?
being discontinued.
No, what happens every January, Priscilla sends out a memo saying this is the new IRS rate for the year, and everyone uses that. So the
Okay.
practice is to
Let's make it
use
the policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Okay.
like. I
The
like-
thing is, it
I
was a
like this.
policy, but it wasn't written like this.
Yeah.
I like this, but I actually like having the historical in there.
I
yeah,
do too.
yeah, that- Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we just add this down below?
I would, actually, I'm
These
hoping
will
that
be
we get rid of all the
reimbursed.
historical stuff, honest, but it's up to you.
I like
I'm-
having the historical. It's kind of.
I would like it not to be there, though, because, I mean, I would like the policy book to be clean, so that if you're looking for
Yeah.
the policy, you know what the heck. There's another one, there's several in there that have drafts, and then two,
can't tell
other
when
ones, and it's like, you
was
don't know
ever
which one
adopted.
you're supposed to
Yeah.
be reading. So, as an appendix, how about as an appendix? Nathan.
I would like it typed like this is.
Yeah,
Typed.
really,
Yeah, actually, we were gonna break
typed,
out the typewriter in
Yeah, you can,
1982.
dates itself, right?
It's electric, it's like,
Yeah,
the old
Name.
So, if with your indulgence, I have a list of bunch that are also kind of no-brainers like this, that I would like to bring a couple of, every couple of
Yeah, I
every
think
meeting, so
that'd
that
be
we can
great.
start cleaning it up. And then for the ones that need more time and review, I think we're gonna start having to have a subcommittee or something, and start addressing these things.
Yep.
And as well as our town bylaw, which has not been reviewed in the last 20 years. So,
It's like the mileage reimbursement, yeah.
Well, town council offered to assist with the bylaw review project.
yeah,
They're willing to take on under the retainer, so.
oh, really?
either-
Okay.
So does this
Realize
mean
how much
that
time they'll
now,
be spending with David, so.
does this mean now I
Get
can
us on the
keep track
next
of
one.
my mileage and turn it in for reimbursement?
No.
I was afraid you were going to say
Besides,
that.
Alan already exempted the bolts, so.
Electric.
he's-
But you can turn it in, just will not say what's
Nothing will
gonna
happen to
after
it.
that.
It can go into that historical record.
Right.
Well, the requirement will be that you charge it here once that charging station
Station
is.
goes
yeah.
in, right.
That'll be your compensation. yeah.
Now, the last thing under item 7 is an employee benefits committee. I would like to start an employee benefits committee. We promised the police in our negotiations that we would. More recently, the library has come and made inquiries about paid maternal leave or.
Family health
fa-
leave.
fa-
Paid
fa-
family medical leave.
medical leave. And so I think that should be discussed at the same time. Maybe we need some tweaks to our policy. I noticed our sick leave policy is 120, you can accrue 120 days, but it's not clear that, for instance, you could use that as a maternity.
Yeah, like a short-term
So maybe we need to, discuss whether we tweak that or not, so that we don't have to do this other paid thing. We, there's,
saw
was that wasn't in the
That's in my-
packet, or was it?
Yeah.
In my report, there's an advisory from
Oh, it was-
Labor Council.
Yes, right, in your report,
Yes.
there was an advisory
Against-
saying, like,
They don't know of any town that has adopted it.
don't do it, don't do it,
Don't
so,
do-
but,
Did you hear it?
but I think it is something that we want to talk about, so,
But your idea for this committee is, tell us,
Well, there was a committee at one point,
I think,
benefits,
under the finance director.
you're right, the Insurance Advisory Committee, at one point in time, when Larry Barton was finance director,
but it's.
and recently, Bonnie sent out a memo saying we were going to revive it, and, so we can follow through with
We need to
that.
revive that.
Yes, yeah.
The other thing we need to revive, by the way, because I did see it in the, when I was rereading, again, all the policies, there's an investment trust fund committee, advisory committee. And I haven't seen hide nor hair of that either.
Yeah, no, they were quite active for a while, and then, yeah, you're right, it's been
So,
a few years.
So there's a bunch of committees,
That
either
was
we
under Larry,
should.
too, yeah.
Yeah, They cleaned out the account and disappeared. yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we should either revive them or just get rid of them, because it's in, as I said, it's in the policy book. Do we have it, do we not have it, do we want it, do we not want it?
Yeah.
So, I guess with your indulgence, if we're in favor of getting this going, once we get a new finance director, I will start pushing on that and having that get
Well,
up off the
we've
ground.
essentially
but-
committed to it.
Yes, I guess what we would need
yeah.
is just like, what is the charter of it and what's the
Well,
makeup?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so if you would be thinking about that, maybe you want to, I don't know, if people have specific ideas that they would like to contribute, and just give them to me, and then, once we get the new finance director, they could help to draft that as well.
and did we
So
have,
can-
did Larry Barton have something that he had brought before the board? A charter
Do
for.
we have an
whatever
old
he had?
charter that we
Yeah,
can
no, I
start with?
think,
Because that might be.
That would be a good place to
starting
start.
I think you
Yeah.
called it the Public Employee Committee at the time, but I think we can find the
Did we
the
find
old
that?
charge
Okay,
for
I'd like to
that.
Specific people on it.
Get moving on it, so, because I just don't, these things always
Yeah.
take time, and,
Yeah, We've only got 3 years.
and we only, I know, I only have 1 year, I'm up back for reelection at the end of the.
You're from police, so you're right.
May, so I'm done.
And the police contract is the drop dead date on this.
Yes. Oh, yeah, 3 years for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Appointments and resignations. We have the resignation of Jonathan Stevens.
What's going on in this town? Everybody's moving
This,
out.
oh, I'll tell you, the other day I was talking to Sandy Nash. I thought she was still living in that house in the center, and turns out she's in Concord
And I
now,
just got an
too.
email yesterday from Claude Van Rogeson, who's moved to New Hampshire, onto the island.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
they're,
That's why I don't see him jogging around
I thought he
anymore.
was
He's living on the
maintaining
houseboat,
both
isn't he?
residences.
Well, he says he's changed his
Got a
residence,
houseboat.
he's got a New Hampshire driver's license, he's voting up there.
Yeah, huh.
okay.
You just lost
Anyway,
one
do you
vote,
want-
Alan.
Do you want me to make a motion here?
Yes, please.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to accept the letter of resignation as submitted by Jonathan Stevens, Planning Board, effective October 3rd, 2019.
Second?
I accept this resignation with regret and with gratitude for Jonathan Stevens's very valuable service. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I just bring us back? Did we actually make a motion on the mileage rate and vote?
Oh,
So I move that
Okay,
the
sorry.
Board of Selectmen set the mileage rate to the current IRS standard mileage, or the then current IRS standard mileage rate, and add that to our policies.
Second?
and could we please have a date on all these policies as we accept them? Thank you. I don't care, a lot of those were signed by, whoever it was. I don't think we need that, but a date would be helpful. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Cemetery deeds.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to transfer land in the public burial ground to Jeffrey Freeman and Marjorie Finley of 245 Rockland Road at the Green Cemetery, Lot D, 197, graves 1, 2, and 3.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Town administrator. That's 9.
The first item in my report, we've got a request from Clark Farm Market for 2 one-day liquor licenses for events on upcoming Thursday afternoons. Thursday, October 3rd, from 4:30 to 6:30, and Thursday, October 10th, from 5 to 7 p.m.
So is this Clark Farm, or is this
It's
the
not the
Garden
garden
Club?
club,
Farm.
then, right? Okay.
This is the market.
Because it
These
says
events
above
will-
it, number one says
Yeah.
garden
It's a
club. but
garden
that's-
club, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because they just asked for one, yeah.
So you already made the motion, right? Or somebody already moved it?
Yeah, oh, no, nobody's
yet.
moved it.
Okay, I move that the Board of Selectmen grant 2 one-day wine and malt beverages licenses pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 14, to the Jeffrey Freeman of Clark Farm Market for events to be held at 201 Bedford Road on October 3rd from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. and October 10th from 5 to 7 p.m., subject to the applicant providing a host liquor liability insurance certificate.
Second?
Any discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. We have a request from the Savoyard Light Opera Company to hang their banner across School Street for their upcoming performances of the Music Man.
I move that the board approve a banner measuring 2 feet by 16 feet to be placed across School Street opposite the War Memorial by the Savoyard Light Opera Company from October 19th through November 23rd, 2019.
That should be
Yeah, and-
2019.
Are those dates correct?
No, because up in the thing, too, it says September 30th through November 4th.
Oh, whoops,
Yeah.
got it.
It
So
happens
it
to
should
these
be probably
annual requests,
October
they just-
26th through, oh, no, they want it in advance of the.
September.
Yeah, September 30th through November 4th.
It's right here. What do you
September
ask for?
30th to November 4th.
Yeah, what's it say in the,
2019.
okay, this is Savoyard.
October 26th, 27th, November
Yeah.
1st, 2nd, 3rd.
But those are the
So,
performances.
the
When do
timeframe
they want to
requested is
hang
from
the?
September 30th through November 4th.
Okay, September 30
Makes sense.
through
Yeah,
November.
forget what I said about adjusting compensation.
That's right. Not enough copying and pasting.
It is good to know we just got 4 years back of our lives.
Yeah.
I, Alan Brown, move this.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next.
All right, attached to the package, you'll see town council's checklist for street acceptances. They passed this along to the resident who was in a few meetings ago on Monroe Hill Road. And he, I think he's been in touch with you, maybe, Kate,
Yes.
since then?
Yes.
But I think this will have to wait until the spring, but at least he knows
Yeah.
what he needs to do.
But also, we have to, okay, so then, going back to the policy book, because this made me scurry back to the policy book, section 13, which was written in November of 1975. It needs to be reviewed and culled, because this is one of the ones where there's several versions of the same thing, slightly different in
Right.
each one, and simplified. So, so that people are real clear about what they are supposed to do, and so we're clear, so what we're supposed to do, because
But these steps that are in here, in the laying out and accepting town ways, those are according to what they should be.
that's more planning board, but the thing is that.
Yeah, no,
it's for
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm
Yeah.
just saying for the purposes of tonight and this particular, is this a motion we're making?
No, there's no motion, this is just.
Okay, this is just the
Yeah.
legal process,
Yeah.
yeah, so that all stays as is.
Yeah,
But there's really nothing for us to do.
Right,
no, there's
Right.
not,
okay.
You know,
it's just,
we're not
this
going
is
to
informational.
proactively take this step because he's got to still work with all the,
Yeah.
you know, the
Right.
residents, right?
Yeah,
Well-
and then it's gotta come back to us, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay?
Okay.
And there's that
Okay, this
advisory
is-
from Labor Council regarding the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act, where they give a number of reasons why they don't support,
Boy, that's
recommend the towns adopt it. And then I've got the upcoming meeting schedule. The special town meeting is on October 7th. I presume you wanted to post for 6:30 in the cafeteria, just in
Yeah.
case, or,
just in case.
yeah, we'll do that.
So do we have enough to put on the October 8th schedule?
We do, actually, yeah.
So, okay,
Yeah.
because, I mean, we talked about not having that meeting if we didn't need it,
I
but
think if we're ready
with this
to,
November deadline, I don't see how we can be skipping meetings before.
Yeah,
right, now, if we have a finance director candidate to be hired.
And then we
sooner
also have the
better.
financial, yes, yes,
Yep.
yes, yes.
So we should keep
Okay.
that meeting.
Okay.
but we're saying we're not gonna meet at 6:30 before a special town meeting, or we
Well,
are?
we're going to
We
post
are.
it,
So, and
and
then
we'll
decide
let
if.
you know,
Okay.
you know,
Yep,
I would think that we would want to, because we might know more about
that
the citizen
amendment.
amendment.
Yeah, that's, yep, so we'll do that. And on October 22nd, you'll hear back from the Personnel Board on the requests you forwarded to them. The tax classification hearing could be November 12th, or it could be the 26th, depending on the state of the recap sheet at that point in time. I mean, Priscilla's been working very hard, holding things together in the finance department, and kind of focusing on the treasurer-collector side of things, you know, at the expense of her accounting duties, but she's getting caught up. But she had to kind of let her side of the house go a little bit to keep up with everything else. So it might be the 26th, which would be fine as far as
Yeah.
getting tax bills out in December.
We moved her into finance director and we moved somebody else into her role, right?
Into,
oh, we just
But-
Could
paid
you
them.
wave your arms?
Maybe she hasn't been paying the bills.
we did, on a temporary basis. She's the interim, finance director until the new person is hired. And then looking ahead on the schedule, we've got the meeting on December 24th, so.
Oh,
I got nothing else doing that night.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's cancel that one.
No, I'll probably be here, yeah.
We could reschedule it, but we won't know until the 10th whether we need it or not.
Right.
Can I go back for a second on the, just because I don't know this process, the Personnel Board recommendation? So how far in advance of our meeting will we get to see what they've come up with?
They're, let's see, we're meeting on the 22nd, so they're going to meet the Thursday before that, so probably by the 18th or so, we'll have a memo from them, and maybe
Uh-huh.
the chair of the Personnel Board could come to that meeting and explain what they're, but they understand that the 15th is the deadline, that they have to get back to you, and,
So we're not talking about making a decision that night about which of those positions we might be recommending. We're just going to hear what they've come up with in terms of cost.
well, I think if you know at that point in time, like, gee, I don't really, wouldn't support this under any circumstances, or yes, I really think this should go to the Finance Committee, I guess, it'd be appropriate to have that kind of a discussion, I think.
And what do we think's going to happen? I mean, do we, there's just no way to know until we see it. Okay.
I mean, we'll probably move most forward, but there may be one or two we don't.
Really?
Really?
And then also, November 26th is 2 days before Thanksgiving. So, we'll have to keep an eye on that one
I
as
think
well.
we usually met that week, because
Yeah, yeah.
it's 2 days before,
Yeah, okay, just,
nobody's cooking a
Just checking.
turkey
You're out of
that
town
night, right?
guests can watch us on TV.
Why, they could
Okay.
just come here.
That's true.
all right.
All right, thank
Still
you.
having a Yule log.
Liaison reports?
Yeah, I want to update people on the Deer Committee, just briefly if I could.
I heard beer committee.
Oh, no, the
That
Deer,
would've been more
the
fun.
Deer Control Committee.
Thank you.
So the hunt begins a week from Monday, October 7th. And the signs are going to go up on the trails starting this Sunday and through the week, but they'll be up at least 4 or 5 days before the actual hunt begins. The signs have been modified a little bit from last year, and the last draft is going through by town council as we speak, so that's underway. And we've decided that we want to do another sort of community input session. But the way our schedules have worked out, we aren't able to do that until after the hunt's already started, which is, what we're proposing is that we're going to actually have a social time from, on Sunday, October 20th, we have a social time from 1:30 to 2:30, where those that would like to come and meet the hunters that are going to be on the various parcels, all the hunters have committed to be there. And then at 3 o'clock, we would have a community input session or discussion. I don't know exactly what the right name would be for it, but it's basically to tell people about what the reasons for the hunt again, and we're getting somebody from Fish and Wildlife to come and talk about just what they've learned about the deer population, and then give people an opportunity to either share their concerns or raise questions, but basically, it's just an effort to continue to educate people about what's happening. So the social is going to be at my house from 1:30 to 2:30, and then we're probably going to use this room for the community input session. I'd very much like the members of the board to come to the social time, if possible, just because I think it would be good for the board to show its support for the bow hunt, since
What day did you say that was again?
It's Sunday, the 20th.
Sunday,
1:30 to 2:30. And
20th
if,
of October,
Sunday,
obviously.
October 20th, yeah. Yep. And I'll send you, an official invitation, but I think it'd be good for there to be a show of support from the board. And if some of you want to come to that community input session, that'd be great too, but I think we can handle it as the Deer Committee.
Oh, no.
But did you say that the hunting starts a week from Monday?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah,
So this
it does.
is
So
considerably
this is,
after that.
yes, it's going to be 2 weeks
Social event
after,
sounds like
just the
more
way the scheduling worked out.
We're gonna have venison?
Yes.
We should.
The social is really geared toward the abutters, so no, I don't think we're going to put that on the, yeah, just the community input, yeah, here in the Clark room, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I've got a list of all the abutters, so we're going to send out an invitation to them.
Are you going to
Targeting.
also invite Timbernook?
I certainly can, yeah.
I think it
If
would
they'd
be
maybe
wise.
Okay, okay,
Um,
sure. I can do
Part of
that.
being out in nature.
Yeah, well, you know, I would not want it ever to be said that they didn't quite understand when we told them this, and I think
Right.
it'd be important to make sure they understand the whole
Yep.
import of this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
We need deer to around. A group of screaming kids
Well,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
deserve to be shot.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing I'd like to report on is the Affordable Housing Trust, just to say that we are pushing, well, the 5 of us are there, but that we're pushing hard on trying to deal with the non-Board of Health issues at Benfield. And I've just recently met with the building inspector, John Mativio, who is great. There are a couple of things on the list of issues that he can address, but the rest of them are really just fall under maintenance and the management of the property. So I talked with town council, with Tom. He can't come next week because he's away on vacation, but he has now got a couple of his staff people looking at the lease specifically to identify, are there any steps that we can take as the trust around any of the issues that have been identified at Benfield.
Good.
And he's going to have that to us by the end of the week.
I went by there today, the manhole covers still are not on.
Really?
I know.
well, that's
And
dangerous.
they're back at the, well, no,
Well,
the covers are
There's covers on
on.
it,
Oh.
but they're
haven't
the
put
ones with
the,
the gorilla tape holding them on.
Yeah, they, you know, they
Okay.
need to be sealed, and that's
Okay,
what's
got it.
releasing
Sorry.
some of the odors, yeah. They're due back, they're not due back to the Board of Health until October, I can't remember.
Man covers were
First
supposed-
week of,
They said it was gonna be installed last week, I thought.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's sort of a larger conversation that we had at the trust that about sort of what's happening with Benfield going forward, and what are, what's Giffey thinking in terms of NOAA's, their ability to maintain the property going forward, and how we get it back on track, and then what's their, as you were, you know, raising at the meeting, Nathan, is what is their kind of what's their long-term budget look like? And is it going to cover the cost of managing and maintaining the property as they should? And then what does that mean for us as the town of Carlisle in terms of if there's a gap there, what's gonna happen? And I think I'm more and more inclined to do something that Nathan was raising, which is to actually convene a meeting with Giffey and Beaudry, you know, the engineer he's hired, but also somebody from Peabody, and then some key people from the town, including John Mativier, and then somebody with some engineering background, and have them present to us their budget for Benfield. So, and so we can actually look at it and see what their plan is going forward, what their finances look like, and their operating budget, and then figure out if there's a gap, what are we proposing we're gonna do about that? And we have, we have some CPA funds that are designated for affordable housing now. I don't know if they're designated, if they're allowed to be spent on, maintenance of a property that we hold the lease on, or if it can only be spent on, say, a capital expense. But
I think it's
we
different for
mainly-
housing. Typically, maintenance isn't allowed, but
Yeah.
for some reason, I think it is for housing. It's
So
not, you
that's-
can't do like routine
Yeah,
type stuff, but, it's more so when something, is no longer usable, it can be replaced.
yeah.
But, I'm gonna check right now, because
Yeah,
for
'cause-
some, housing is a completely different set of rules.
Yeah, so I just think we need to be thinking about that and looking at what is possible. The other thing, I chatted with a couple of folks that were involved in Benfield in the early days, and they were also suggesting that maybe we should go to Bank of
They don't
America.
talk to some of us anymore.
We should talk to Bank of America, who is, I guess, as their Community Reinvestment Act, to meet those requirements. They covered some of the tax credits, I guess? Is that, Luke, you probably know more about
I
this than I
believe
do.
so, yeah.
Yeah, but they might be interested in, if there was a gap, that they might be able to do something in terms of getting the building up to where it needs to be, and then we try to get NOAA to where they've got a budget that is going to be able to maintain the property, and then maybe it's new expenses, like for capital expenses is something we might consider coming out of CPA funds. So, yeah, so it's just, I think Nathan's
Yeah.
right. We need to look at the big picture
Yeah.
and long-term,
Yeah.
as well as at the same time, we're trying to get these short-term problems addressed.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is how, I think I totally think we should do this. I think I worry a little bit about how we present it, right? They're a for-profit company, and so I wouldn't want to come into it as, how are we going to fill the gap, as much as you tell us you don't have money, you're telling us that this is, how bad is this problem? Are you going
Right.
to be closing this facility down? Kind of, what is your long-term plan?
Right.
I think, the approach should be, we're not gonna help, you're a for-profit, but it sounds like you're in really deep trouble. Tell us more about that. And then, after they tell us more, I just don't want them to go into it thinking, oh, we're
Right,
just gonna
thinking-
bail them
right,
out.
right. I totally agree.
Because I wouldn't be in favor of that,
Right.
because
Yeah.
that's
Right.
just gonna be this massive
sinkhole.
hole with
Yes.
a partner that's not a very good partner.
Right.
Yes, no.
Right.
Right.
I thought they were supposed to be a nonprofit company.
They were.
Well, they were, and
They've
so,
converted.
Well, if you read the articles, they actually were a profit company right at the very beginning, because that was seen as, the articles, it was seen as a benefit. Because they were a for-profit company, they had to pay taxes, and we were gonna get $28,000 a year from them. That was kind of all part of
I see.
the articles in the Mosquito around the launch of it.
Yeah.
So it was great for us that they were a for-profit, because we got the tax. It's not that we didn't tax them, we got the tax.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it was 28,000 a year.
It was,
the
yeah,
starting point.
yeah. So, CPA funds were allowed to provide grants, loans, rental assistance, security deposits, interest rate write-downs, and other forms of assistance directly to individuals and families who are eligible for community housing, or the entity that owns, operates, or manages such housing for the purpose of making housing affordable, right? So, it seems like there's some wiggle room in that,
Yeah,
but
there's
yeah, ultimately, we could give them,
You could do it to individuals.
yeah.
Yes, in fact,
Well-
this is something I was hoping that you guys would be eventually looking into
Yeah.
about, we could be offering, seconds, or down, first down payments to young couples to buy,
Right. Yep.
houses and stuff like
Yeah,
that, so.
well, every couple of years, we get a thing from Habitat for Humanity, too. They always want to do a project in Carlisle. I think it's one of those that goes out to a bunch of different communities, but unfortunately, Carlisle's just so damn expensive that, it doesn't make sense to necessarily do it, but it might be something to look into, for that as well, I mean, it's expensive, but, yeah, I think, there are different ways that you can do that, right? You can supplement a family, or you can supplement an organization, you try to leverage the funds any way we can, so.
And how much is in the housing portion of the CPA?
4 something, low 4s, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some money.
Yeah.
With a public water supply, you could probably, and individual septics. Instead, I think what the problem is these large septic systems don't work well. But you had individual septics and a public water supply, then you don't have to have such big property. So it's possible that we might be able to find somewhere to develop that.
Well, that's what we have at Benfield, right? Public water supply and it's. septic,
Yeah.
But
Well,
they've
that's-
also chosen to use
But a big septic, I mean,
Yeah.
because that's a big thing. I'm thinking of doing small houses like the Woodward property.
Yeah, well, he's gonna have one big septic.
He's gonna have a
Yeah.
big septic,
Yeah,
but I'm,
yeah. It's, a lot of it's maintenance, though, I mean, they've gotta be
Well, that's
maintained,
true.
right? So.
any other liaison reports?
Well,
Thank you,
just,
Barney.
Beverly Shorey and I went to the Mass Selectmen Association's meeting on housing last Saturday down in Lakeville. It's not surprising that most of the solutions that people reported there don't apply very well to Carlisle.
Yeah, that's,
Like getting $4 million in mitigation money from the large shopping center that's going in.
yes, yeah.
But it was interesting, and there were some, it's worth going to, but really no great solutions proposed that are applicable for us.
Anybody planning on going to the MMA annual?
January.
In January?
Well,
I might go.
I might go. I was informed that there was some benefit to the town in
Yes.
terms of our insurance.
There is, depending on the
Yes.
number of workshops you go to, and there is a
Yeah.
discount on the insurance.
Oh, really?
So,
Yes.
yeah,
Maybe it's worth going.
I've been doing that.
Oh, that's
I
why.
have a parking space 2 blocks away.
Oh, well, hey,
There you go.
I'll carpool with you.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have a
Go.
quick update with Complete Streets if everybody else
Yes,
is.
yes,
Yeah, so,
please.
we met again, there weren't any significant changes as to what I had, discussed the other day. The only thing was, we were talking about, a significant amount of cobbles, in terms of the islands and along the edge of the road, and I think all that's gonna be turned into green space now. It's all just gonna be primarily grass. We may put some low shrubs, bushes, that sort of thing, but it's primarily gonna be grass now. The cost of cobbles was way too much, but also just in terms of, maintenance, we weren't sure, but Gary said he has no issue maintaining this stuff. He maintains a lot of it now. So that's the proposal that we're gonna put forward. I can forward everybody the presentation that we, in a sense, approved at the last Complete Streets meeting. It'll be the presentation that, I don't know who's actually presenting, probably David and I will present at the special town meeting. And then the idea is we'll have that at the very end, and then if people want to have a back and forth and want to ask questions, they can do that. So it'll be the first of probably a couple information sessions, but, yeah, chugging along. But as Tim said earlier too, the goal is going to be to start that project when school ends, probably July 1, because traffic
Yeah.
drops off dramatically. So there's going to have to be traffic pattern changes and all of that stuff, and the chief's going to work on that.
Come to
but-
think of it, every time I see people trying to make a left onto school from the Rotary area, is that addressed in our Complete Street plan
No,
there?
so that'll have to be the next phase. Yeah, because I think the idea would be the next phase would really look at Westford Street. And ultimately, if Westford Street becomes gets rid of that stop sign, we would not necessarily prohibit that left turn, but, well, probably, we'd make it one way, right? And ultimately, you'd be forced to turn down Concord and turn up.
Okay,
you know,
yeah,
towards
that
the
makes
church.
sense.
Yeah, so
It
it
would
would
make
change
it
the
one
flow,
way.
but it would, right, so down would be one
Oh, you
way.
could still turn right into it, yeah.
Yeah, but down would probably
Yeah.
be one way.
Yeah.
Right, and then, you force people to make that left, and, and it gives you enough space for queue and all of that stuff.
Right, okay.
But, yeah.
It does raise a confusion of whether they're going down Concord or not.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yep. So, but yeah, that would all be
okay.
phase 2.
Well, 5 minutes to 10. 5 minutes early for adjournment.
There you Yeah, go. Wow.
We
Well
want to just
done.
talk for 5 more minutes, or shall we go home?
I move adjournment.
Second.
That's because we didn't have the minutes to do. We would have just still squeaked it under the wire. Okay.
All righty.
Oh, yeah, that was the other, in the
Slam my wrist on
the
something. No idea what.
policy book, we have
That's
a
what I said of it.
fees and licenses, et cetera, section, and we have an auto dealer license. Did you know that? Or fee, I don't remember whether it was a license or a fee. It's like,
Does the auto body place have a license?
what do you think? Oh, you
They
think
do
that was the
sell cars
body?
on occasion.
Oh, maybe that's why it
Sometimes
is.
they
I was
just want the
wondering what-
license so they can go to the auto auction.
Yeah, maybe,
They don't
yeah.
sell from their place
Oh.
of business.
Yeah.
But they need a license to get into the
Oh, okay,
auto
that's,
auctions.
because I was wondering, what the heck? Okay. But,
All these
okay.
interesting things
Yes,
you're
you-
discovering.
The fee is $27,000.
That's right.
Yeah, really, that's the fee. Oh, gosh.
A missed opportunity.
I know, we gotta change
But you
that.
know what, maybe the fee, this was done in like, odd two,
How long
Maybe
have you
we
had your
should
cat?
Check to see what the fee is.
Yeah.
Maybe
Oh,
it's time
gosh.
to-
Oh, that's awful.
He was adorable.
Oh, we're still going?
Mr. Brown, I think.
Oh, so we shouldn't bash the public yet? Can we bash?